What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto's shadow clone accidentally married his own clones? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. The resonance of destruction and chaos echoed through Minato's head as he dodged the insanely strong blows this masked man liked to dish out. While his village was being destroyed by the most powerful tailed beast in existence, he was stuck fighting a freakishly powerful man with impossibly long limbs and a single Sharingan eye, which frustrated him to no end. If he survived this he would have to have a word with Fugaku. Had enough yet? I thought you were supposed to be able to kill thousands in seconds? I'm not impressed. Minato never let taunts get to him, in fact, he prided himself on his ability to keep his composure. But when he saw Kushina's dead body, well, composure was the last thing on his mind. As he slammed another Rasengan into the assailant he was not surprised to see that, once again, he had brushed off his signature technique like a fly. What are you made of? Minato asked in astonishment as he flashed away. The assassin just chuckled with amusement. You don't want to know the answer to that. His arm stretched out and snatched Minato by his throat, but the Hokage was gone in a flash, and he reappeared behind the assailant. Two three-pronged kunai were thrust into his back, and the assassin roared in anger as blood spilled down his back. He turned around and slammed his hands on the ground, creating a fissure that seemed to never end. Minato watched as the assassin wrenched both kunai out of his back, and he realized that it was not blood, but a thick, black liquid. The man's Sharingan pierced him with hatred from across the canyon, and then he was suddenly gone. Minato immediately turned around and started flashing towards the village, not bothering to chase him. There was already too much at stake. Just a little longer. We must hold it at bay until the Hokage arrives. One leaf ninja shouted to his comrades. Although he didn't really believe that was possible at this point. The nine-tailed demon fox was just too powerful. Hundreds of leaf ninja were already dead, with hundreds more wounded. It would truly take a miracle for the leaf to come out on top. Fire style. Big flame bullet. Jiraiya exhaled a huge breath of fire powered up with toad oil right into the nine-tails' face. The fox reared its head back and howled in pain, but quickly countered with a tail swipe, sending Jiraiya flying to the ground. Shit, look, it's the fourth Hokage. Not a second after that exclamation did a loud tremor sweep through the earth as Gamabunta, the boss of the toad summons, landed on the nine tails, flattening it against the earth. A guttural roar of defiance ripped through the air as the toad was blown away by a pulse of malevolent, crimson chakra, destroying the terrain in its path. In a bright, yellow flash, Minato appeared next to Jiraiya and helped him up. A long, hard-as-diamond staff cracked the nine tails in the skull, sending it back down to the ground. The old third Hokage had donned his armor once more in the name of his village, much to the protest of his family. Retirement be damned. Just because I am not the current Hokage does not mean I am not Hokage. Of course, he was right. I'll hold it down, Minato. You focus on the ceiling. Hiruzen jumped away and engaged the fox after that, using the adamantine Nioi, a weapon which could extend as far as the eye could see and would never break or scratch. The weapon was really a transformed version of Enma, the Monkey King and personal summon of the third Hokage. Ceiling? What is he talking about, Minato? He asked desperately. The blonde Hokage nodded solemnly. Jiraiya then noticed that he had a bundle of blankets in his arms. What is? Minato looked at Jiraiya with eyes full of sorrow. I didn't want to have to do this, but I don't see any other choice. Jiraiya paled as the blankets shifted and a tiny hand poked out. Is that? Yes. This is my son. It's too bad I'll never get to raise the boy. What do you mean? Jiraiya already understood the reason for Naruto's presence. He was to become the next Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, like his mother before him. But why wouldn't Minato be able to raise him? What have you done, boy? I've created the most complex and efficient sealing technique for a Jinchuriki. With this seal, I will split the Nine Tails chakra in half, yin and yang, and seal both halves in myself and Naruto respectively. Then over the years as Naruto's chakra coils grow, he will start to slowly absorb the Nine Tails chakra until he absorbs all of it. As Minato explained this, Jiraiya stared at him in amazement. Jiraiya was probably the only person in the Hidden Leaf who truly understood just how hard a seal of that magnitude would be to pull off, and yet Minato talked about it like it was a simple exploding tag. How the hell did you create something like that? Furthermore, how are you going to hit the fox with that huh? And you still haven't answered my question about why you can't raise Naruto. Jiraiya was talking too fast and too seriously, but Minato understood his concern. Kushina is dead. Someone figured out that Kushina went into labor, and a man with a single Sharingan eye came to where we were doing the birth. The Anbu were dead before they knew what was going on. I saved Naruto, but the blonde Hokage looked down and shuddered. Damn it, that was what he had wanted me to do. I was in my safe house when suddenly I felt the Nine Tails chakra, and I knew there was nothing I could do. By the time I got back, the Nine Tails was free and a kunai was buried to the hilt in her head. Jiraiya was visibly taken aback by his student's bluntness. It wasn't like him. We'll get him. No, we won't. You can, I won't. I have a date with death in a few moments. That's one date you won't see for a while, sensei, but I guess the hookers will hold you over until then. Just tell Hiruzen that I'm sorry I failed him. Oh, and if you see Kakashi, please tell him the same. Minato stated as he interrupted the Sannin. What do you mean you have a date with death? I don't like how you're talking right now, Minato. If you seal the Nine Tails, I will die. Minato interrupted once again, this time with finality. The cost of power is great, sensei. You should know that. In this case, it's my soul. But I'm willing to pay it if it will save the village. It's the least I can do. Jiraiya was totally baffled. Least you can do? You won the fucking war. And don't give me the humble shit boy. You and I both know it's damn true. That's why you wear that hat. The white-haired man stated angrily. And it's because I wear this hat that I have to do this. It is a Hokage's duty to sacrifice himself for the village. If this is what I must do to save the home that I love and cherish, then so be it. Minato rebutted sadly. Jiraiya could only fume silently as his once eager and positive student turned Hokage got ready to sacrifice himself. Just promise me one thing, sensei. Jiraiya glared at Minato for a long second before he sighed and shook his head. Stubborn boy. Anything, Minato. Name it and I'll do it. Watch over him for me. I just want him to be happy. He deserves it. Jiraiya nodded. I'll do it. As the boy's godfather, it's my duty, right? Minato smiled. Thank you, sensei. You don't know how much that means to me. Minato then turned to see the demon fox barred in a cage made out of the adamantine Nioi. Now, Minato. Hiruzen shouted as the fox bellowed in rage. The blonde Hokage nodded, handed Naruto to Jiraiya before pulling out a scroll and making the last hand sign he would ever make. Goodbye, sensei. Dead demon consuming seal. The scroll opened and a large, circular seal with a whirlpool pattern flashed red as blue chakra chains shot out of it and almost mummified the fox. Enma transformed back to normal as the chains slowly lifted the Nine Tails into the air and ripped it in half. An image that would stay seared into the minds of every ninja fighting that day. The two halves were then pulled back and siphoned into both Naruto and Minato's bodies. Identical seals appeared on their stomachs, and Naruto's crying had ceased. Gamabunta, who had recovered just moments ago, knelt down next to Jiraiya as the Sannin caught Minato in his arms. What did I miss? Jiraiya glared at the Toad Boss. Everything, you fool. What? How dare you call me a fool, Jiraiya? Forget snakeskin wallets. I could use a new Jiraiya skin wallet. The Toad bellowed challengingly. I'm not in the mood to joke around, Gamabunta. Minato is dying. That got the Toad's attention, and his demeanor did a 360. Minato, what happened? The Hokage laughed hoarsely. Details, what does it matter now? I did what I had to do. The village is safe, Naruto is safe, and I retrieved the Nine Tails, although that never really mattered. Now I just need to rest. Jiraiya shook him. Not yet. We can save you, Minato. Just don't give up. Jiraiya wanted to take Minato and run, but with Naruto in his arms he couldn't carry both. And he certainly wasn't going to leave either of them. No, I saw the death god. I saw his arm as it reached into my stomach and ripped out my soul. I know it was real too. He coughed. Don't worry, sensei, everything is fine now. Just take care of Naruto and everything will be. His words were swept up in the wind as his life faded away, and not a second later, a bolt of yellow lightning streaked across the sky. Jiraiya gazed at it in awe before he started to laugh. Even after you're dead, you're still the fastest. That's quite a story, Jiraiya. Hiruzen Sarutobi commented. Jiraiya had explained, in detail, Minato's final moments to the newly reinstated third Hokage as soon as he returned to the village. And now we have his legacy to protect. Jiraiya said, looking down at Naruto. The blonde baby was fast asleep, with a look of serenity on its face. I promised Minato I would look after the boy, and I won't go back on my word. Hiruzen nodded in agreement. Yes, I think that is the best course of action. Unfortunately, now that I have my old position back, I do not believe I would be able to adequately care for the boy. But Jiraiya, how do you expect the village to react? Surely they will call for Naruto's blood. A look of pure anger and determination appeared on Jiraiya's face. They'll have to go through me first. I'll kill anyone who tries to harm Naruto, Leaf Ninja or not. Hiruzen could tell that Jiraiya was completely serious, and he honestly couldn't blame him. Jiraiya was going to treat the boy like his very own flesh and blood. I understand your feelings, Jiraiya, but please do not do anything stupid. Jiraiya shook his head. It would be stupid on their part, not mine. Hiruzen sighed. He would just have to accept Jiraiya's aggressiveness. The door to the Hokage's office suddenly opened, and both Hiruzen and Jiraiya frowned. Danzo. The old war hawk shuffled into the room, his face being an emotionless mask. What you could see of it at least. Hiruzen. And Jiraiya, you're here as well. Jiraiya tched at the man and took a seat in the corner of the room. Danzo ignored Jiraiya's blatant disrespect and moved to sit in front of Hiruzen. How can I help you, Danzo? Danzo looked over at Jiraiya, and his eyes locked onto the boy in his arms. So that's the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Jiraiya's head snapped up and he glared at the elder. Danzo turned back to Hiruzen. I have a request. Hiruzen raised his eyebrow. What do you request? I wish to take the boy under my wing and train him myself. Absolutely not. Jiraiya interjected. You are not the Hokage. Danzo shot back with a glare. But I am. And Jiraiya has already been given custody of the boy. Danzo's single eye narrowed. You would waste the opportunity to create a powerful weapon for the Leaf because of sentimentality? You are a fool, Hiruzen. Jiraiya stood up now, enraged at the old man. He is not meant to be a weapon. He's a hero, you bastard. Minato would never let anyone use his son as a weapon, and damn it, I won't either. Danzo's eyes widened. Son, Hiruzen nodded. Yes, Naruto is in fact the son of our late fourth Hokage. That is why the Nine Tails was sealed into him, because Minato did not think it would be appropriate to use another person's child if he could not sacrifice his own. Danzo sat in silence for a moment before standing. Very well, but you are making a mistake. With that, the old warhawk exited the room. Jiraiya glared at the door. That man pisses me off. I wonder what the Hokage wants to tell us. Maida Guy commented as all of the ninja and civilians in the village gathered around the Hokage tower. I'm sure it has something to do with recent events. Kakashi Hitaki answered. At 15, Kakashi was already one of the most respected ninja in the village, having achieved the rank of Jonin at age 13, and Anbu only a year later. Along with him were Maida Guy, one of Kakashi's friends and an eccentric Chunin, Asuma Sarutobi, son of the third Hokage and a Chunin as well, and Shikaku Nara, lazy genius of the Nara clan and Jonin rank ninja. It looks like we'll be finding out now, Shikaku said, pointing at the Hokage, who had just emerged from the tower. He stood on top of the tower, and he activated a technique that would amplify his voice. Thank you all for coming. I know many of you are busy rebuilding your shops and homes, so I promise to make this quick. Behind the Hokage stood his former student. In Jiraiya's arms he held a bundle of blankets. As you know, our fourth Hokage gave his life to defeat the Nine Tails in combat and save our village. Murmurs of sorrow and regret spread through the crowd. Everyone had been affected by the death of their leader. But what most of you don't know is that a tailed beast cannot truly be defeated. Instead, they must be sealed into something, or someone. At this point, Jiraiya stepped forward, handing Naruto to the third. Before he died, Minato used a sealing technique of great power to seal the fox into his own son. The crowd was deathly quiet. That piece of information had hit them like a hammer. The fourth Hokage's final wish was to see his son treated like a hero, because he is what keeps the Nine Tails at bay. Without him, we may not be here right now. There was a low murmur that reverberated through the crowd. Most of the people there didn't really know how to feel about this. On one hand, Sarutobi was right. He was keeping the Nine Tails at bay. On the other hand, what if the Nine Tails was able to control the boy, or worse, break the seal? I understand how many of you may feel, Hiruzen continued, But you must understand that there is nothing to fear. The seal is the strongest of its kind, and there is no way the demon fox could escape. Hiruzen knew that wasn't entirely true, but the only people who could let the fox free were Minato and Jiraiya. And eventually, Naruto. So please, I beseech all of you to view this boy as a hero, and not as a demon. Honor the memory of the fourth Hokage by treating his legacy with respect and kindness. Hiruzen observed the crowd. Some of the people seemed to accept his speech, and held no hostility towards Naruto. But he could tell not everyone shared the same sentiment. Some were angry, whether it was over the loss of a comrade or what have you, and wanted Naruto's head as payment. He sighed as he turned around to report back to his office. It would be a hectic day, and he needed a little time to prepare himself. I'm going to need my pipe to get through this one. The Hokage, clan heads, and all of the other important people in the Leaf Village sat around a long conference table. At the head sat the Hokage himself, with his one remaining student seated on the right side of him. Then there were the two village elders, Homura Mitokado and Koharu Utatane, as well as Danzo Shimura. There were the clan heads, Hiyashi Hyuga, Inoichi Yamanaka, Shusa Akamichi, Shikaku Nara, Fugaku Uchiha, Shibi Aburame, and Sume Inuzuka. Hiruzen represented the Sarutobi clan. Then there were the representatives of the civilian sector, Jizuna Kaikoru and Daidashi Sukedo. You made a bold declaration today, Hiruzen. Do you think it was smart to inform the village of Naruto's Jinchuriki status? Koharu asked skeptically. I did what I thought was right. Minato's last request was that Naruto be treated as a hero. I must respect his wishes. And in doing so you have wasted a valuable tool. Danzo interjected. Jiraiya clenched his fists but stayed silent. An outburst from him would only hurt Sarutobi's argument. We will not discuss this again, Danzo. Naruto will be placed under the care of Jiraiya. He is the boy's godfather, and he is next in line to receive him. Danzo shifted in his seat but said nothing more. While I understand your reasons, Lord Hokage, Hiyashi supplied, I see much wisdom in Danzo's opinion. With a weapon like that, surely our enemies would think twice before any kind of attack. Danzo smirked. I agree as well. This is an opportunity we cannot afford to pass up. Koharu announced. This is not up for discussion. As the Hokage, I have already given my judgment on the matter. Do you wish to defy your Hokage? That silenced everyone. Good. Now, let's move on to the next order of business. Our forces are greatly diminished at this point. We lost too many ninja to the Nine Tails, and our forces are the weakest they have been since after the last war. In order to counter this problem, I must ask that all clan heads be reinstated as active ninja and start accepting missions again. A few of the clan heads seemed surprised, but others just nodded. Anything for the village, Shikaku replied. Fine with me, Sume added. While I do not disagree with this course of action, who will run our clans for us? Fugaku asked. Relegate your responsibilities to the clan elders if you must. But we need our strongest ninja out on missions to show that we are not so weak. My student will be accepting missions as well. In the meantime, we will do a complete overhaul of the Ninja Academy curriculum so that students can be promoted to genin at an earlier age. It may not be the best course of action, but we need to bolster our numbers. No one voiced their disagreement, so Hiruzen leaned back in his chair. That is all I have to say. If any of you wish to speak, the floor is yours. Shikaku Nara cleared his throat. I think we should restore Jonin status to a good portion of our Anbu. It would give the appearance of having a larger army, and they could still take on similar missions. Hiruzen nodded. That sounds like a good idea. Does anyone have any objections? No one said anything. Very well, I will see that it is done. Shikaku nodded. Anything else? It stayed silent. Good, then this meeting is adjourned. Wait, what? Kakashi was confused. He had just been called into the Hokage's office to find out that he was essentially being kicked out of Anbu and being reinstated as a Jonin. While it didn't really bother him, he'd rather have stayed in Anbu. I'm confused, Lord Hokage. You see, Kakashi, after the attack from the Nine Tails, our forces are at an all-time low. By reinstating you as a Jonin, your name is back on the roster, and our numbers are bolstered. As an ANBU, you aren't technically on the official list of ninja. Hiruzen explained. I see. Well, anything for the village, Lord Hokage. Hiruzen smiled. With that, Kakashi exited the office, leaving Hiruzen alone. That had been the last Anbu turned Jonin of the day, and the Hokage didn't have another appointment until later that evening. So he took out his pipe and packed it full of grinded-up marijuana. While many would say that it was immoral to smoke the substance, Hiruzen disagreed. In fact, he knew many ninja in his force smoked the stuff after a stressful day or mission. It was better than tobacco because it was completely harmless, and the feeling you got was much more relaxing. So, he lit his pipe and took a long hit, keeping the smoke deep in his lungs, and exhaling after a few seconds. Just then, he heard a knocking on his window, and he only knew of one person with the audacity to enter through the window. "Come in, Jiraiya." The window slid open, and Jiraiya hopped into the room. "Keep the window open." Jiraiya walked over to the desk, and the scent of the smoke filled his nose. "Stressful day?" Hiruzen just nodded and set the pipe down in front of Jiraiya, who picked it up and took a hit. "Oh yay, that's the good stuff." Hiruzen shook his head with a smile. "What do you need, Jiraiya?" The Sannin set the pipe down and shrugged. "Nothing really. I've just been a little on edge. Naruto is a handful. I think this is the first time he's slept in 2 days. I love the kid, but he's a damn handful. So I left 30 shadow clones and decided to pop in for a visit." Hiruzen chuckled. "Well, he is Minato's son." Jiraiya scoffed. "More than you know it. Did you know he can already walk? He's a month old. That should be physically impossible." Hiruzen's eyes widened. "That's impressive. He's going to make a fine ninja one day." Jiraiya nodded. "You bet your ass he is. And I'm going to be the one who trains him." "Well, of course you are. You're the only one who can." Hiruzen took another hit of the pipe and exhaled slowly. "You just better be careful. Who knows who might target him?" Jiraiya sighed. "I'm not so much worried about attack from within the village. Most of the ninja forces accept the fact that Naruto is just a host surprisingly. It's mostly the civilians who distrust him. I'm more worried about Hidden Rock. Yes, if anyone were to make an attempt on his life, it would be them." Back in the Third War, Minato had single-handedly defeated entire battalions of rock ninja literally in seconds with his Flying Thunder God technique. It was how he got the nickname the Leaf's Yellow Flash. Since then, the Hidden Rock had harbored an intense hatred for Minato and by association the Leaf Village. And surely that hatred would now be directed at Naruto. "I know I can handle any assassins, and I have traps set up all over my estate, but I'm still worried, you know? It's natural for you to be. He's your godson." Jiraiya sighed and walked back over to the window. "Yay. Well, I should be getting back. Shadow clones can get kinda stupid sometimes." With that, Jiraiya jumped out the window and returned to his abode. Hiruzen continued to smoke his pipe, hoping that soon everything would finally return to normal. "It's about time you got here," Jiraiya said as he shut the door behind his guest. "I heard you had a penchant for being late, but this is a little ridiculous, no?" His guest shrugged. "I got lost on the road of life, what can I say?" "What kind of excuse is that?" The silver-haired Jonin sighed. "Now what were you really doing?" Kakashi looked down at the ground. "I was at the memorial stone." Jiraiya's eyes widened, and then an expression of understanding appeared on Jiraiya's face. "Say no more, kid. I understand." Kakashi nodded. "Let me take you to the kid." Jiraiya led Kakashi upstairs and into one of the large rooms of the estate, where Naruto was meditating quietly. "You got him to meditate?" At this, Naruto's eyes popped open, and he smiled. "Hi, Kakashi." The blonde boy jumped up and ran over to Kakashi, engulfing him in a hug. "Not anymore," Jiraiya stated with a sigh. "Hey Naruto. How's it been?" "Great. Uncle Jiraiya started training me to become a ninja." Kakashi turned to Jiraiya. "Really? Don't you think 4 is a little young? How old were you when you were put in the ninja academy?" Kakashi scratched his head and chuckled. "Point taken. Seems like so long ago. Anyway, what have you been teaching him?" The Jonin asked. "Nothing too intense. Basic chakra manipulation, some taijutsu, and some weapons training. I'm sure he'd appreciate it if you helped him out a little too." Naruto's eyes lit up. "That would be awesome. Will you help me train Kakashi? Please." Kakashi laughed and ruffled the boy's hair. "Sure, I'll help train you, Naruto." The boy shouted in excitement. "Yes, come on, let's go now." Naruto bolted out of the room, and he could be heard charging down the stairs and out the back door. "Wow, he sure has a lot of energy." Jiraiya scoffed. "Tell me about it. Sometimes he even tires me out." "Great. So this isn't going to be a walk in the park?" Jiraiya laughed and put a hand on his junior's shoulder. No, not by a long shot. Kakashi sighed. It's okay, I'll only be gone for 2 weeks, tops. Footsteps could be heard on the stairs, and seconds later Naruto appeared in the room again. Come on Kakashi, what are you waiting for? I'm not gonna become Hokage if you don't train me. Kakashi held his hands up. Okay, we'll go train now. Kakashi looked gravely at Jiraiya before being dragged out the door. Jiraiya let out a chuckle as he followed the two boys. He was glad Kakashi could do this on such short notice, not that he really had a choice in the matter. His mission would take him all the way up to Lightning Country, and he knew he couldn't leave Naruto alone for that long. Even with his state-of-the-art traps, someone was bound to try something stupid. Over the years, the villagers had developed mixed feeling about Naruto. Most of the civilians still hated him, mostly because of their ignorance of Minato's genius. They still thought the Nine Tails could escape at any time, and that Naruto was a menace to society. On the other hand, a good portion of the ninja population saw Naruto as what he truly was, a hero. They knew Minato's seal couldn't be broken without extreme circumstances, and with Jiraiya to watch over the boy, it was highly unlikely it would ever come to that. Of course, there were still some ninja who vowed to avenge their fallen comrades by slaying the demon, but that faction's numbers lessened every year. It was an ongoing battle, but Naruto was slowly gaining the recognition he deserved. The main reason that Jiraiya didn't want to leave the boy alone, however, was because of Hidden Rock. Like they predicted, as soon as word reached the ninja village about the fourth Hokage's heir, there was a unanimous demand for his blood. Assassins had been sent multiple times over the years, all of whom had been dealt with easily by Jiraiya. When Hidden Rock found out it was Jiraiya of the Sannin that was watching over the boy, they got smarter. Now, assassination attempts only happened when he left the village, and if it weren't for the Anbu stationed around the estate 24/7, the boy would be dead. How Hidden Rock knew when Jiraiya would leave the village, he didn't know, but it was an extremely dangerous breach in security that they had no way of fixing without any evidence. Anbu had been looking into it for years now, but apparently whoever was doing this was very good at cleaning up after themselves. Jiraiya did one final check of his gear before slipping out of his house and making his way to the village gates. He just wanted to get this mission over with so he could stop worrying. So what kind of techniques do you know? Naruto asked excitedly. Kakashi and Naruto were sitting on Jiraiya's back porch after a surprisingly tiring training session. While the boy wasn't anything Kakashi couldn't handle, he had insurmountable amounts of energy, and tiring him out was a feat of its own. So for the past half hour, while they had been resting, Naruto had been pelting the Jonin with questions about ninjas, ninja techniques, missions, and really anything else that came to his mind. His thirst for knowledge was impressive, and he took to things like a leaf in the wind. Well Naruto, I know many techniques, thanks to my Sharingan. Naruto cocked his head. Sharingan? What's that? Kakashi pulled up his headband and Naruto's face took an expression of awe. Whoa, your eye looks so cool. Kakashi chuckled. Yay, it is pretty damn cool. It's also very powerful. You see, with this eye, I can copy a technique I see someone use just by watching how their chakra flows through their bodies. You can see people's chakra? Kakashi nodded. With the help of this eye I can. It also gives me an enhanced perception of reality. What does that mean? Well, it basically means that I can see things better and quicker than a normal eye. It's easier for me to read through a person's attack, and it gives me insight on what I can do to counter that attack. It has saved my life more times than I can remember. Naruto smiled. That's amazing. Is that something I can do too? Kakashi shook his head. Unfortunately, number. Do you know what a bloodline limit is? Naruto nodded. Yay, Uncle Jiraiya explained it to me. It's a special ability passed down through certain clans, right? Kakashi nodded, once again surprised at the boy's knowledge. He called him Uncle Jiraiya? Does that mean he knows about his parents? Kakashi pushed the thought aside and continued to explain. Correct. The Sharingan is a bloodline limit passed down through the Uchiha clan. Naruto's face lit up with understanding. Oh, I've heard of them. They live in the Leaf Village, right? Kakashi nodded. But I thought your last name was Hitaki. It is. I'm not an Uchiha. This eye was given to me by my dead teammate, Obito Uchiha. The story behind it is a little gruesome and I'd rather not go into it. All you need to know is that this eye is the only living memento I have of Obito, and he saves my life every day just by letting me see the danger a normal eye couldn't see. Naruto nodded. That's so cool. Well, except for your teammate. Kakashi looked up into the sky. It's okay. He's in a better place right now. A solemn silence came over the two, until Naruto broke it with another question. So if you can copy techniques, you must know a lot, right? Over 1,000, actually. They call me the copycat ninja because of it. Naruto's eyes almost bugged out of his head. Over 1,000, that's a lot. Kakashi laughed. It sure is. But I'm always learning more. Whenever I go on missions, there's always a new technique to learn, and I take full advantage of my Sharingan to learn one. Naruto jumped up from his seat. Let's train more, he exclaimed suddenly. Kakashi's eyes widened. Really? You're not tired? Naruto shook his head furiously. No way. I'm always ready to train. Kakashi chuckled nervously and stood up. This kid is going to be the death of me. Damn you, Jiraiya. Come in. Hiruzen called out after hearing a knock on his door. The door opened, and a blonde blur raced around his desk and tackled the old Hokage into a hug. Hi Gramps. Kakashi walked in after with a hand on his head. Naruto, I told you to be calm when we went to see the Hokage. Not tackle him. Hiruzen laughed and waved his former Anbu captain off. It's no trouble, Kakashi. And hello Naruto. What brings you here today? The blonde ball of energy looked up at Hiruzen with a bright, beaming smile. Come to lunch with us, Gramps. Hiruzen looked up at Kakashi, who, from what you could see at least, seemed mortified that this little boy was calling the Hokage Gramps. I'd love to, Naruto. Kyoko, a petite, brunette woman, scurried into the office. Yes, Lord Hokage? Please hold all of my appointments for about an hour. I'll be heading out to lunch now. His secretary bowed in respect. Of course, Lord Hokage. Anything else? No, that will be all. Kyoko scurried back out of the room, and the Hokage stood up. Did you have a destination in mind, Naruto? He asked, already knowing the answer. Ichiraku's. Naruto shouted with a smile. Very well. Ichiraku's it is. The Hokage walked around his desk and left his office, followed by Naruto and Kakashi. They walked through the halls of the Hokage mansion until they finally reached the exit. As they walked down the road, Naruto began to tell the Hokage of his training with Kakashi. 2 hours? Kakashi, is that true? The silver-haired Jonin nodded. Yes, sir. His stamina is truly amazing for a boy his age. The Hokage's eyes widened, and he smiled down at the boy. That's amazing, Naruto. You're going to be a strong ninja one day. Naruto grinned. Yay, and I'm gonna take your hat. Hiruzen seemed shocked by this, but then he let out a hearty chuckle. Well, Naruto, that's a quite respectable goal. But the road to becoming Hokage is harsh. Do you think you have what it takes? Naruto nodded. Of course. I won't give up until I become Hokage. Hiruzen gazed into the boy's eyes and saw the fierce determination that burned there. I believe you, Naruto. The will of fire burns strong in you. Don't ever lose sight of your dreams. Hiruzen smiled widely, and Naruto smiled back, both of them breaking into laughter. Kakashi just watched with interest, starting to understand the bond that the Hokage and Naruto shared. They were really like grandfather and grandson, one passing his knowledge and wisdom down to the next. Thank you for coming, Kakashi. Kakashi nodded. Of course, Lord Hokage. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair and took out his pipe. You don't smoke, do you? Kakashi's eyebrow rose. What? Asuma's never told you. Hiruzen cocked his head slightly, and Kakashi's eyebrow widened. Oh, you didn't know. Well, you didn't hear it from me. Right. Hiruzen lit his pipe. Anyway, the reason I asked you to be here was because I am curious about the depth of Naruto's skills. How strong is he? Well, like I said before, his stamina is incredible. Easily Chunin level. He has also mastered the tree climbing exercise, and he can even effectively use it in battle. His taijutsu is a bastardized version of Jiraiya-sama's taijutsu, but it's wild and unpredictable. Although it's very effective, he actually landed a few hits. Granted, I wasn't going full strength, but it's still impressive. Hiruzen nodded. Well, it looks like we have another prodigy on our hands. Sir, if I may, might I suggest enrolling him in the academy? Kakashi asked carefully. The academy? He's 4. The Hokage stated in defiance. Lord Hokage, I was 5 when I entered. We may have been at war, but Naruto is just as good, if not better, than I was at that age. He's a true genius, and that kind of potential shouldn't be wasted. The Hokage sighed deeply before leveling Kakashi with a contemplative stare. You were Minato's student, so it only makes sense that you would want to be involved with the boy. This isn't like you, Kakashi. The silver-haired Jonin smirked. Yay, well, he brings it out in me. Yes, he certainly does. He brings it out in everyone, it seems. I'll speak to Jiraiya about it when I see him. I'm sure he'll be ecstatic. Hiruzen nodded and Kakashi walked out of the room with a bow. Hiruzen couldn't deny, if Kakashi's observations held true, that Naruto was 100% ready for the academy, but he was just worried about the boy. He knew exactly what it was like to be a prodigy, and he hoped Naruto would be strong enough to make it through. Especially considering who his father was. Minato Namikaze was a pretty big damn name to live up to, considering he was the strongest shinobi of his generation. But maybe Naruto had the potential. He would just have to wait and see. The academy? Are you serious? Naruto asked, excitement dancing in his eyes. Yes, I am. You'll be the youngest kid to ever be admitted into the academy. I'm so proud. Jiraiya smiled down at his godson. And when you become a famous shinobi one day, it will be me, Jiraiya of the Sannin, who can take credit for training you. Naruto looked up at Jiraiya and frowned. Uncle Jiraiya, you're doing it again. Jiraiya blinked and sighed. Sorry kid, I guess I'm just excited to have a pupil again. You know I trained you, father, right? Naruto rolled his eyes. Yay, Uncle Jiraiya, you've told me like a million times. Jiraiya laughed. Alright, I'll stop. But seriously, you should be proud. You have the potential to be one of the strongest shinobi who ever lived, did you know that? Naruto looked at Jiraiya in awe. What do you mean? Jiraiya smiled and poked Naruto on the chest. You have a power inside you that can be matched by no other. If you never go back on your word, and never give up, then you will never fail. Naruto nodded firmly. I'll never give up. You know that. Jiraiya nodded. I know. Just remember, even in the darkest times, you must push on. No matter what happens. I told you, I'll never give up until I'm Hokage. Jiraiya smiled. Good. Now, let's go get you enrolled in the academy. It will take the three of us to defeat Jiraiya, but we can do it. A cloaked figure said. 4 more cloaked figures stood in a circle in an empty warehouse in an unknown location. Jiraiya of the Sannin? Another of the figures asked. Yes. He has already come dangerously close to discovering this once. We cannot afford for him to succeed in that. The first one responded. Do you really think we can take on one of the legendary Sannin? You do not need to worry about that. We will take care of that. Rest assured, the Sannin will die. You two are dismissed. The first figure stated firmly. 2 of the figures, one of them being the one who questioned whether or not they could defeat Jiraiya, disappeared in swirls of wind. The 3 that remained started walking slowly the other way. Why are we doing this? One of the cloaked figures, a girl, asked. Because it needs to be done. Another, a man, answered, his gritted teeth showing under his hood. Some things in life aren't fair. But think about what you're doing. It must be done. The 3 figures stopped. One of them was breathing heavily. They stood in silence as the one figure caught his breath, and then they continued on their way in silence. Is that the academy? Jiraiya smiled down at his godson. Sure is. You ready for your first day? Naruto nodded enthusiastically. Good. Now, I know you're going to find most of this stuff boring, but please at least try to pay attention. Naruto sighed and nodded. Alright, just remember the other kids are going to be a lot older than you, but you can't let them intimidate you. I'm not scared of a bunch of children. Naruto shouted in defiance. Jiraiya let out a throaty chuckle, the irony of the statement amusing him. Whatever you say, kid. Now go. Have fun. Naruto nodded and dashed away from Jiraiya, joining the other children who were pouring into the academy. Jiraiya smiled, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. Knowing Naruto, these next few years would be hell. Alright class, settle down. The chatters and whispers of the ninja prospects ceased, and the Chunin instructor, Iruka Amino, cleared his throat. Today, we have a new student. I'd like to introduce you to Naruto Namikaze. Iruka motioned towards the blonde, who was standing at Iruka's side. One of the students' hands rose. Yes, Aki? Are you related to the 4th Hokage? Naruto nodded. Yay, he was my dad. Whispers broke out across the room. He must be really strong. He has to be. But look how young he is. Iruka tapped the blackboard. Okay, that's enough. Naruto, you may sit wherever you like. Naruto nodded at the Chunin and walked all the way to the back of the class, taking an empty seat in the far left corner next to a girl with long black hair and bright, shining blue eyes. They exchanged glances as Naruto sat down, and Naruto smiled at her. Hi, I'm Naruto. The girl blinked before smiling slightly. I'm Kairi. Kairi stared into Naruto's eyes for a moment. So you're the son of the Hokage? Yep, then I want to fight you. Naruto's eyes widened. Why? Well, you have to be strong if you got into the academy at this age. Kairi explained. And if you're the Hokage's son, I bet you've been trained well. Naruto nodded. That's what I thought. So I'll fight you, and beat you, so I can be the strongest kunoichi in the Leaf Village. Naruto stared at her before grinning. I accept your challenge, but I'm not gonna lose. I'm gonna be Hokage one day. Kairi nodded. Following in your father's footsteps? That's gonna be tough. Naruto shook his head. Doesn't matter. I'll never give up until I become Hokage. Kairi smiled at Naruto. I like you. Do you want to be friends? Naruto grinned widely. Yes, I'd love to. Kairi smiled back, and she blushed slightly. Okay, then from now on, you're my best friend, Naruto Namikaze. Uncle Jiraiya. Jiraiya spun around, seeing his godson running towards him from the academy entrance. Hey kid, how was it? Naruto shrugged. It was alright. I kinda knew a lot of the stuff they were teaching already. But I made a friend. Jiraiya's eyebrow rose. Oh? And who might that be? Her name is Kairi. I sit next to her, and she's really cool. Jiraiya patted the boy's head. Oh ho, already drawing them in are we? Huh? Never mind. Anyway, let's go. You wanna get some training in? Naruto nodded. Of course. Let's hurry. Jiraiya laughed as Naruto ran down the street, following the boy at a leisurely pace. He truly cherished his time with the boy, and he wouldn't trade anything for it. Okay, that's enough. Naruto collapsed to the ground, while Jiraiya just dusted his hands off. That was pretty good. You almost got through my guard. Naruto groaned. Yay, but that knee to the ribcage hurts like hell. Jiraiya shrugged and turned around. You'll get used to it. For now, we can rest for— Jiraiya's head suddenly snapped to the side, and he threw a kunai into the bushes around the training ground. Who's there? Two cloaked figures popped out of the bushes, and Jiraiya tensed. We have come to take your life, Jiraiya of the legendary Sannin. Any last words? Jiraiya scoffed and got into his battle stance. You think it'll be easy to kill me? I'm so excited to prove you wrong. Jiraiya then disappeared and reappeared in between the two assassins. Let's begin then, shall we? We already have. Jiraiya jumped straight into the air to avoid the third cloaked figure that came charging at him from behind. As he ascended, he flung both of his legs out, kicking both of the other cloaked figures away. They easily recovered, however, and they both started going through hand seals. Water style. Water dragon missile. Lightning style. Lightning dragon missile. Two dragons, one of water and one of lightning, formed in the air and charged at Jiraiya, combining themselves into a giant water dragon with crackling lightning armor. Jiraiya could only substitute himself with a nearby rock as a means of escape, marveling at the power of the technique. It seems like you are stronger than I anticipated. Then I may have to go all out for this. Naruto, run back inside. It's too dangerous for you out here. The blonde boy nodded and scurried into the house, leaving Jiraiya and the assassins alone. Jiraiya was surprised that the assassins did nothing to stop Naruto, but it just confirmed that he was really their target. You should feel honored. I don't usually break this technique out for just anyone, and especially not so early. But I can't let you hurt Naruto. I guess it's just not your lucky day. Jiraiya flew through hand seals, biting his thumb and slamming his palm onto the ground when the sequence was complete. Summoning technique. There was a poof of smoke, and when the smoke cleared, two small toads were sitting on each of the Sannin's shoulders. Jiraiya, what's going on? Fukasaku, the old toad sage, questioned. Hello Ma, Pa. It looks like I'll need your help once again. Again? You should really master this technique on your own, Jiraiya. Ma scolded. I'm a very busy man, I don't have time to train like I used to. Jiraiya sighed. I really am sorry to bother you, but it looks like I'll need your help for this one. The two toads waved their hands in dismissal. We don't mind, Jiraiya boy. We're always glad to see you. Shima answered sweetly. But you don't look too beat up, Fukasaku continued, so I'm a little confused as to why you summoned us. I'm mostly worried about Naruto. These three claim to be after my life, but who knows what they really want. Jiraiya explained hastily. What? Both toads shouted in disbelief. They're here to kill you? Jiraiya flinched at their bluntness but then nodded. That's what they say. Well, they're pretty stupid. Shima screeched. Who would want to take you on? Jiraiya shrugged. I don't know, but I would like to finish this before it attracts attention. Shima and Fukasaku nodded, and both of them put their palms flat against each other and started channeling nature chakra. The change was instantly noticeable. Jiraiya's face had taken on a whole new look. His nose had gotten larger and rounder, warts grew all over his face, and red marks appeared around his eye, signaling his use of the honored sage mode. God, I look like one ugly son of a bitch. In an instant, he appeared next to one of the assassins and kicked him in the side, sending him flying into the woods. But I can definitely kick your asses. Naruto watched from inside the house as his godfather took the first strike. The young boy recognized the honored sage mode immediately, and he couldn't help but smile a bit. From what Jiraiya had explained to him, the honored sage mode would exponentially increase Jiraiya's fighting prowess, which meant the assassins had little chance of surviving the battle. But deep in the pit of his stomach, a cold fear festered and grew with every second that passed. Jiraiya's estate was no normal estate. Being both a best-selling author and a seasoned ninja who took S-rank missions almost exclusively, Jiraiya had plenty of money to spend. But being the modest man he was, only a small portion of that money went towards the house. No, most of his money went to the training ground in the backyard. The training ground was the exact replica of the training ground Jiraiya had trained at during his genin days. There was the river which sat right behind the clearing. The clearing was surrounded by thick woods, and the 3 posts that stood in the center, where Jiraiya had been tied all those years ago. Jiraiya was just relieved that he had so much room to fight. He couldn't imagine the damage this battle would cause to the village. But luckily, he wasn't in the village, and he was free to use even his most powerful techniques. Rasengan Barrage. The ground where Jiraiya's technique hit exploded and blasted chunks of the earth in every direction. 2 of the assassins, who had been where Jiraiya's technique impacted moments ago, ran towards Jiraiya, and one started speeding through hand signs. Fire style. Eruption. The ground rumbled, and Jiraiya jumped away in time to avoid the geyser of flame that shot up from the ground. The second assassin then jumped towards the eruption, and finished a sequence of hand seals right before entering the inferno. Fire style. Magma fists. The figure burst through the fire, both of his fists encased in solid molten rock like boxing gloves. He charged in and started swinging his fists around like wrecking balls, destroying anything unfortunate enough to be in his path. Jiraiya danced around the giant fists, only barely avoiding each strike. Pa, a little help. The 2 toads nodded and started flying through hand seals. Wind style. Jetstream. Pa shouted. Toad oil bombs. Ma shouted a second after. Pa aimed his technique at the ground, shooting Jiraiya into the air, and safely out of the assassin's range. Ma then shot 2 oil bombs, one at each fist, and they exploded spectacularly. Jiraiya fell back to the ground just outside of the cloud of smoke left over from the explosion. He then hastily flew through some hand signs, and erected a mud wall to his left, blocking a water dragon missile that had been speeding towards him. When the smoke cleared, the 3 assassins were standing together in the middle of the clearing, all of them looking as if they hadn't even started fighting, except for the singes on the cloak of the man caught in Shima's attack. These 3 are tough. Pa, ready? All 3 sped through hand seals. Sage art. Burning oil bath. All 3 sucked in a large breath, before each expelled a different substance. Jiraiya spat out oil, Shima breathed out a powerful fire technique, and Fukasaku shot out a powerful gust of wind. The 3 matters converged, creating a super hot lava flow that rushed towards the assassins. One of the assassins created a water encampment wall, but the lava flowed right through it, creating a cloud of thick steam. Jiraiya stood still as his technique slowly melted away, waiting to see if he had killed the assassins. Are they dead? Fukasaku asked hopefully. They have to be. No one can survive that attack. Shima answered enthusiastically. Jiraiya continued to stare into the cloud of steam, and when he saw a faint glowing at the center, he cursed. Clearly you're wrong. These guys might be on my level. Jiraiya muttered as he plunged his hand into the ground. He pulled a large, stone sword with a blade as sharp as any steel one from the depths of the earth and swung it around a few times. It's been a while since I've used this thing, but it should all come back to me pretty quickly. He lunged forward and slashed at the three offenders, making them jump backwards. A shadow clone of Jiraiya came crashing down on the trio from above, barely missing his targets as his stone blade sunk into the ground. Thinking they were safe, one of the assassins started a technique, but suddenly the stone blade shot up from under him, and he only barely managed to keep it from splitting him in half. The sleeve of his dark cloak fell to the ground and his toned right arm was exposed. Jiraiya pulled the sword from the ground and scratched his head. Damn, that should have got him. He felt a presence behind him, and he whipped around and brought the blunt side of his sword up to block a stunningly powerful kick. The sword rattled in his hand and Jiraiya almost dropped it, but his grip stayed firm and he used the counter momentum to send the attacker flying away. The other two assassins flew at Jiraiya, each crouched on the head of a water dragon missile, and at the last second they jumped off and shot bolts of lightning at their attacks, supercharging them the second they collided with the ground. Steam and smoke rose from the point of impact, but Jiraiya was nowhere to be seen. Haha, take this. Giant Rasengan barrage. Two Jiraiyas holding monumental Rasengans attacked in a pincer formation, aiming to completely pulverize the assailants. The third one, with speed that could have possibly matched Minato's, appeared next to his comrades and a second later they were all gone. Jiraiya's attacks struck each other, destroying the shadow clone and sending Jiraiya flying away like a rocket. A large crater had formed where the attacks collided, and the three assassins were standing in the middle of it, acting as if the battle had yet to start. Enough of this. We have to kill him now or help is going to arrive. The lead assassin ordered in frustration. His two partners nodded and disappeared to engage their target, leaving him to think silently. It's a shame you have to die, Jiraiya, but the fate of the world demands it. He then disappeared as well as a single drop of water hit the ground. Anbu. Two Anbu, Dog and Weasel, appeared in front of the Hokage's desk. Yes, Lord Hokage? Dog asked as he stepped forward. Do you feel that? It was silent for a moment. If you mean the large source of chakra southwest of here, then yes. Weasel answered after a few seconds. That chakra feels like Jiraiya's, but why would he be using so much? In fact, I'm almost positive he's using the honored sage mode. Sarutobi clenched his fists. Your orders are to investigate what Jiraiya is doing. If he's in danger, please report back to me. You don't want us to lend him our aid, sir? Dog questioned. No, I do not. If Jiraiya is in fact using the honored sage mode against his opponent, then I am afraid you are no match for this enemy. You must report back to me. Understood. Yes, Lord Hokage. Both of the Anbu simultaneously answered. They then disappeared without a sound, off to fulfill their mission. Jiraiya groaned as he pushed himself up, shaking the stars out of his vision. Ma, Pa, you okay? The two toads grunted in response, and Jiraiya stood. He cracked his neck and smirked. Good, because these fuckers are starting to piss me off. Suddenly, Jiraiya leapt out of the way of a large tunnel of green fire that blasted through the woods. Everything in its path had been completely torched, and Jiraiya's eyes almost bugged out of his head. What the hell was that? He said to himself in awe. I've never seen such a technique before. Fukasaku commented, just as awestruck as Jiraiya. Goddammit, who the hell are these guys? Jiraiya shouted in anger. There's nothing I can do. Fire like that will burn right through the stomach of the great fire-breathing toad of Mount Myoboku. Jiraiya's eyes widened as he was again forced to jump out of the way of the powerful technique, this time his clothes getting singed from proximity. Damn, that's fucking hot. Jiraiya, we need a plan. Fukasaku shouted. Alright, gimme a sec. Jiraiya pulled out an oddly shaped kunai from his pouch and stared at it intently. This is our last shot. I'm running out of chakra. This will definitely take up the rest, but, well, it's never failed before. Shima and Fukasaku nodded. They of course knew what it was. Jiraiya twirled it around on his finger a few times before gripping it tightly. Even in death you're still saving my ass. Some sensei I am. Please tell me you just saw that. Yay, I saw that. Okay, at least I'm not going crazy. Dog and Weasel stood on the top of Jiraiya's estate. From there, they could see the massive stream of fire tear through the woods with alarming ease. Even Weasel, whose clan specialized in fire-style techniques, had never seen or heard of a technique so powerful. We should report to Lord Hokage. Weasel suggested. I agree. Let's go. And faster than they ever had before, Weasel and Dog raced to the Hokage's office, immediately appearing in front of his desk. Luckily no one else had been in the room, but it wouldn't have mattered. This was an emergency. Lord Hokage. Dog greeted stoically, as he was expected to. Ah Dog, Weasel, you have returned. What news do you bring? The old Hokage asked. Lord Jiraiya may be in serious trouble. From what we saw, one of them has a fire-style technique with destructive capabilities I could only dream of. The Hokage raised his eyebrow. Jiraiya has a technique like this. Describe it for me. Weasel stepped forward. The only way to describe it would be a massive stream of green fire. It disintegrated everything it touched. The Hokage's eyes widened. That's not Jiraiya's technique. Green fire? What kind of power could generate that? I had to go there now. Dog and Weasel stepped back in surprise. Lord Hokage, you will aid Lord Jiraiya? Dog asked fearfully. I must. I'm the only one strong enough to. I may be old but damn it Kakashi, I'm still Hokage. Kakashi was shocked at the blatant disregard of protocol from the Hokage, but it wasn't like Itachi didn't know who he was anyway. The Hokage had ripped off his robes, revealing his suit of armor underneath. I will go aid Jiraiya now. Follow if you must, but do not interfere in the fight unless I give the order. Are we clear? Dog and Weasel both nodded, and the three shinobi disappeared from the Hokage's office. Pa, there's one last thing. The two elder toads turned to the Sannin. What is it Jiraiya? Shima asked curiously. Jiraiya's solemn tone was a rare one, so of course her curiosity was piqued. If it looks like I'm gonna die, please go back home. The two sages were shocked. Don't say things like that. Shima shrieked. You're not gonna die here you idiot. Jiraiya shook his head. It doesn't matter. Just promise me you'll do it. One day, you have to train Naruto, whether I'm here or not. Only you can teach him. Jiraiya was very serious, and the elder toads could only agree. Fine, then we just won't let it come to that. Shima stated boldly, bringing a smile to Jiraiya's face. If these were his last moments alive, he was glad Fukasaku and Shima were here to see them. The trio had regrouped not far from the house after their plan to flush Jiraiya out had failed. They figured that getting close to Jiraiya's godson would give him a reason to reveal himself. It had been unusually quiet when suddenly, Jiraiya jumped out of the woods, throwing a kunai with a fake explosive tag in the middle of the assassins. They scattered immediately, Jiraiya going in pursuit of the leader. He charged in at his target and started to take wild slashes with Minato's kunai. The two other assassins then appeared next to the leader, immediately charging in at Jiraiya. Their strikes were quick and perfectly timed, but Jiraiya was able to hold the taijutsu barrage off rather well. It was only when the leader jumped up from the ground behind him that Jiraiya dropped his guard, turning swiftly to deliver a solid chop to the neck. The leader blocked the blow and jumped in the air, sending Jiraiya skidding away with a spinning kick. Jiraiya slowly stood and brushed himself off, tossing the kunai into the air and catching it with a smirk. You three put up a hell of a fight, I'll give you that. I'm impressed, really, but this game is over. Jiraiya waved the kunai in front of his face with a victorious smirk. No one has lived through an encounter with this technique. You should be honored that it took this much to kill you. Jiraiya then hurled the kunai with as much force as he could straight at the trio of ninja. One of them retaliated with another kunai, intercepting Jiraiya's kunai, both of them clanging uselessly to the ground. It seems your technique has failed. Jiraiya suddenly appeared behind the leader. I don't need a kunai to do it. Jiraiya swung his kunai, and the sound of metal cutting flesh pierced the air. Jiraiya's eyes widened. Wah, I didn't recognize it at first, but that is, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth Hokage's flying thunder god technique. Impressive. Too bad you aren't the only one with a time-space ninjutsu. Jiraiya coughed as the assassin pulled his blade out of Jiraiya's heart with a squelch. The toad Sannin fell forward, coughing up copious amounts of blood in the process. The assassin poised his blade for a killing blow, and was about to end Jiraiya's life, when his blade was blocked by a long metal rod. Hiruzen Sarutobi was standing over Jiraiya's body, the adamantine nyoi in his hands. Get out of my village. Naruto's stomach dropped. The blood, it was Jiraiya's blood. Jiraiya was bleeding, dying. He felt despair and anger well up inside of him, when suddenly he was blanketed by a very warm feeling. like someone had just poured a bucket of warm water over his head. Suddenly, red started to bleed down the boy's eyes until they were fully red, and it was all he could see. No! The back of the house was blown away as the half-inhuman voice stopped everyone in their tracks. Even Jiraiya was startled, and he was barely coherent. It finally broke through. Hiruzen muttered as he examined Naruto with fearful fascination. The three assassins were also awestruck. So this is what the Nine Tails is capable of. The leader whispered in awe. It's staring at us. Another stated frantically. I wonder why? The girl asked sarcastically. They had no time to retort however, because Naruto was upon them in an instant, three tails billowing open in their faces. They each barely dodged getting pierced through the skull by the chakra tails, but they couldn't dodge the claw that bashed all three of them into the ground. The second strike from the claw only smashed into the ground as the leader once again used his time-space technique to escape. Another tail sprouted as the boy fell to the ground in agony, his skin burning away from his body. The three assassins took that as their cue to escape as Hiruzen and the two Anbu jumped around Naruto. They're getting away, Lord Hokage. Dog shouted. We have no choice. Naruto is the higher priority. The Hokage answered back, a mix of emotions present in his tone. They heard a loud groan and they whirled around to see Jiraiya trying to crawl toward them. Jiraiya! The Hokage shouted in concern for his student as he bent down to help him. Quickly, I can fix the seal. Jiraiya's voice was raspy and quiet, and Hiruzen was terrified for his student. The Hokage pulled Jiraiya over to Naruto, who was now completely covered by a shell of red chakra shaped like a fox. The Jinchuriki roared as it raged out of control and Hiruzen could do nothing as it lunged at him, claws poised to rip out his heart. He was suddenly shoved to the ground when he felt and tasted blood splashing on his face. Above him, Jiraiya's palm was on Naruto's forehead, while Naruto's now healing arm was plunged through Jiraiya's chest. It took a few seconds for the boy to clear the cobwebs in his head, and when he did he started to cry. Uncle Jiraiya. Jiraiya coughed and started to laugh. Hey, don't cry kid. You're gonna be just fine. The white-haired mane gently pulled Naruto's arm from his chest, wincing in pain as he did so. But I hurt you. You're dying. Naruto wailed in despair. This isn't your fault, Naruto. I was done for before you did this. I had to stop the Nine Tails from taking you over. I had promised your father. Jiraiya explained sympathetically. But, you're dying. How will I live without you? Naruto asked as he stared into Jiraiya's eyes. I'm sorry, Naruto. I'm sorry I'm not gonna get to see you grow up. I'm sorry I'm not going to see you graduate. And I'm really sorry I won't be there when you get your first girlfriend. Jiraiya smiled. But I know you'll be just fine without me. Just remember, don't ever give up. I know you'll be strong one day. Naruto stared into Jiraiya's eyes and nodded. I'll never give up, Uncle Jiraiya. Not until the day I die. Naruto promised with all the determination he could muster. He watched through tears as Jiraiya smiled, and then closed his eyes, the life leaving his body forever. Naruto stared at his lifeless body, collapsing over it and going into a fit of sobs. The Hokage and his Anbu silently paid their respects to their fallen comrade as Naruto lamented his loss. Hiruzen had shed a few of his own tears before walking over to the boy and bringing him into the house. He tucked the boy into bed, Naruto having no trouble falling asleep, and went back out to Jiraiya's body. He sealed it in a special storage scroll so that Jiraiya could have a proper funeral. He definitely deserved one. Hiruzen sighed heavily as he looked up into the night sky. Today was supposed to be a special day for Naruto. But now, it was tainted with the death of his beloved godfather. The weeks that followed were sure to be just as trying, and Hiruzen could only pray that he would be able to help Naruto through whatever he went through. Naruto lifelessly stared at Jiraiya's memorial. Hiruzen stood next to the boy, a hand on his shoulder, silently mourning the loss of his one remaining student. It was ironic really, when the Sannin were children Jiraiya was the worst of the three. Now however, Hiruzen could see that he had been the strongest. He was the only one with the will of fire. Naruto openly wept, not bothering to wipe the tears from his face. Naruto had built the memorial himself, insisting that Jiraiya didn't want a stupid fucking rock over my head while he was buried. His body had been cremated by the toads on Mount Myoboku itself, an honor very few have ever received. His ashes had been buried in the woods around the Leaf Village, in a special place Naruto designated. That's where he built the memorial, a small, smooth, round stone, with a burning candle, and a copy of Jiraiya's book The Tale of the Gutsy Ninja. He was going to put one of Jiraiya's porn books, but he figured that wasn't really appropriate. The funeral itself was small, in fact only 3 people were there. Once again Naruto insisted that it was what Jiraiya's would have wanted, and so only the people closest to him were there. There were Hiruzen and Naruto, and then there was Jiraiya's wayward teammate Tsunade Senju, who had promised she was only here to pay respects to her former teammate and then get the hell out of the village. So the 3 stood over the memorial for hours on end, reminiscing on their times with Jiraiya throughout the entire day. Halfway through the day it had started to rain, but it had fazed none of the mourners. Late at night, when the rain finally stopped, Naruto looked up at Hiruzen, his voice barely audible. "Can I go home now?" Hiruzen nodded. He then turned to Tsunade. "I'm sure there's nothing I can say to get you to stay, is there?" Tsunade glared at Hiruzen. "Are you crazy? This damn village is cursed. And because of it, Jiraiya is dead." Hiruzen flinched. All because he loved this stupid village. "Shut up," Naruto mumbled, still staring at the ground. "What was that?" Tsunade asked, glaring at the boy. "I said shut up," Naruto suddenly shouted, his head snapping up, his eyes flashing red for a moment. Tsunade's eyebrow shot up in surprise, instantly recognizing who exactly this boy was. She had never met him before, but now she could easily tell he was Minato's child just by looking at him. The village meant more to Uncle Jiraiya than his life did. That's why he sacrificed himself. Naruto's eyes were burning with anger. "Aren't you supposed to be a part of this village too? You're a disgrace." Tsunade's anger spiked, and Naruto's eyes widened at her crushing killing intent. He was a little scared, but he stood firm. "You watch your mouth, brat. You have no idea who you're speaking to. I know all about you. I know about Nawaki and Dan." Tsunade's eyes widened. "After Dan died you gave up. You let your self-pity overwhelm you, so you tried to gamble and drink your sorrow away. Don't talk about something you know nothing about." Tsunade furiously shouted. "I know everything about it." Naruto screamed back. "What do you think I'm going through right now? But I'm not just going to give up. I'm going to be strong like Uncle Jiraiya, and I'll never give up until I become Hokage." Tsunade turned pale, as if she had seen blood. "And I'll be the best Hokage the Leaf Village has ever had." Hiruzen stared down at the boy, who was breathing rather heavily after his tirade. His words had a clear effect on Tsunade, and he was the only person alive who would ever get away with saying that to Tsunade and not ending up splattered across a rock somewhere. Still, Hiruzen was proud of the boy's spirit. Jiraiya was right when he said Naruto was special. After Tsunade collected herself, she glared at the boy for a few seconds before turning around with a huff, and walking away with her usual swagger. Naruto looked up at Hiruzen, who shook his head, before taking the boy's hand to walk him home. "Naruto, open up." Kakashi sighed as he banged on the door to Jiraiya's estate. Naruto had pretty much cut off contact with the whole world for a week, besides the Hokage, and Kakashi was worried. Of course, he knew about Jiraiya's death, and he knew Naruto was affected by it the most. But he wanted Naruto to go back to attending the academy. He had only been there for a day before Jiraiya was killed, and he hadn't been back since. The Hokage personally excused all of his absences of course, but Kakashi still wanted the boy to go back. He had real potential, and he would only get stronger over time by learning and training. Honestly, it was as if his potential was limitless. Kakashi was surprised when the bolt clicked, and the door opened, revealing a tired-looking Naruto. He was wearing his pajamas with his funny sleeping cap with the eyes, and there were bags under his eyes. "Hi Kakashi," he mumbled. "Hello Naruto. Can I come in?" Naruto nodded and turned around, leading Kakashi into the kitchen. On the table was a big steaming bowl of ramen, and Kakashi sighed at the boy's eating habits. "How have you been Naruto?" Kakashi felt like an idiot for asking, but he really had no idea what to say. Comforting people was not on his extensive list of skills. It hurts. Kakashi knew the pain of losing a loved one all too well, and it was heartbreaking to see Naruto go through it. "I know it does Naruto," Kakashi said with a sigh. "I miss him. A lot of people miss him. I miss him, but he wouldn't have wanted you to feel this way, would he?" Kakashi asked, hoping he could help the boy. "I know, but I can't help it. What am I supposed to do? You are supposed to never give up. Naruto turned to Kakashi and his eyes widened. Continues Jiraiya's legacy and become the powerful ninja he believed you could be. He had more faith in you than anyone else. Prove to him that his faith was rightfully placed. Naruto stared at Kakashi, a smile slowly forming on his face. Okay, I'll be the strongest shinobi who ever lived. That's a promise. Kakashi chuckled at the boy's insane promise and ruffled his hair. Well, if you want to be the strongest, you should probably go back to the academy. Naruto jumped out of his seat. Oh man, I forgot all about the academy. Kakashi laughed. That's okay. The Hokage personally excused your absences, so you won't be in any trouble. So, you ready to go? Wait 1 minute. Naruto dashed upstairs and got changed in a record amount of time, surprising Kakashi when he returned a minute later. Okay, let's go. Kakashi and Naruto approached the academy, a smile back on Naruto's face. He was excited to get back into the academy, and maybe he would finally get to show off some of his skills. When they got to the entrance, Kakashi left Naruto with a pat on his head, wished him good luck, and left to fulfill his duties. Naruto was about to walk into the academy when his collar was grabbed and he was yanked backwards. Wah! He flailed his arms in an attempt to regain his balance, but it was in vain, and he fell on his ass. He was a little confused at what had just happened, and when he looked up he saw two big, blue eyes glaring at him. Hello Naruto. Kairi stood over him, eyes narrowed. Where have you been for a week? Naruto got up and turned around, facing Kairi. My uncle died. Kairi's eyes widened, and her guilt was immediately apparent. Oh, I had no idea. Naruto shook his head. It's okay. I'm feeling better. Kairi smiled. Good. Now let's go to class. Naruto nodded, and they both made their way through the academy to their classrooms, taking their seats in the back. There were a few whispers about Naruto's return, but nothing too serious occurred. Iruka walked in a few minutes later, and was very surprised to hear his call of Naruto was met with a here. He smiled when he saw his newest student back in the classroom. Good to see you're back Naruto. Naruto chuckled and scratched his head in response. When Iruka finally finished roll, Naruto was pleased to find out that the first half of the day today was dedicated to taijutsu sparring. He hadn't trained in about a week, but he was confident he could take the kids in this class. He wasn't a prodigy for nothing. Iruka led the class outside, and around the back, to a small training area with kunai targets, punching posts, and sparring areas. Okay class, I know you all know how this works, but I must explain this for Naruto's sake. Iruka smiled at the blonde and he smiled back. The way we spar here is simple. One person stands in the ring, and then I choose someone to spar with them. The winner stays in the ring, and can stay as long as they win every fight. Do you get it? Naruto nodded. Good. Would you like to go first then? I would like to see your skills, so I can rank you. Naruto stepped into the middle of the ring, and waited for Iruka to choose his opponent. Okay let's see, Yoku you go first. A boy with milky blue eyes stepped forward, and Naruto identified him as a Hyuga. He didn't think it really mattered, this kid probably couldn't use his bloodline limit yet anyway. They both stepped forward, and Iruka showed them the proper way to conduct a spar, before ordering them to begin. Faster than any academy student could track, Naruto was behind Yoku, delivering a spinning kick to his head. Yoku went down hard, having no time to react or defend himself. Naruto stood over Yoku calmly, waiting for Iruka to call the spar. Iruka was shocked at Naruto's speed, having no doubt none of the students could have tracked it. He was well above academy level, and he was certain that he wouldn't lose to any of the kids here. Naruto, can you come here a minute? Naruto walked over to him. Yes sensei? I don't really know how to say this, but I can't let you spar against these children. Naruto looked at him in confusion. Why not? Well, quite frankly I don't want any of them to get injured. Naruto smiled a little bit, before looking annoyed. But then who am I going to spar with? Iruka sighed. I think that will be me. Naruto's eyes widened. Really? Alright, that'll actually be a challenge. Iruka smiled, and walked into the circle. Okay class, because Naruto is, well to be blunt, possibly the strongest one here, I will have a spar with Naruto. His class looked annoyed at his comment, but they really couldn't protest it, so he shrugged. Naruto, are you ready? The blonde nodded, and then they begun. Naruto jumped in at Iruka, his fist cocked back, aiming for his face. Iruka ducked under the swing, and aimed a punch at Naruto's exposed stomach. But Naruto had grabbed Iruka's shoulder and spun out of the way, deflecting the punch with his other hand. Naruto's leg came spinning around, and Iruka was only barely able to catch it. Naruto dropped to the ground, and ducked under a haymaker from Iruka, but could not dodge the knee to his gut. He rolled backwards, rolling out of the circle, thus declaring Iruka the winner. Naruto sighed as he pushed himself up. The rest of the students looked at Naruto in awe, baffled by Naruto's skill. How an academy student could take on a Chunin was beyond them, but they knew he was strong. Iruka approached Naruto with admiration in his eyes. That was impressive, Naruto. I don't think it's a question of where you'll be ranked, but I have to assess your other skills first anyway. Since Iruka could do nothing to curb his interest in Naruto, he decided to dedicate the rest of the day to figuring out exactly where the boy would be ranked. In all honesty, he already guessed the boy would take the number 1 spot, but Iruka's fascination with the possible prodigy was too great to pass up a chance to measure the boy. The class was now gathered on the sports field of the academy. Alright class, next is ninjutsu practice. Kairi, will you come to the front to demonstrate the 3 academy techniques please? Kairi gave Naruto a smug look before she stood next to Iruka and performed the transformation technique, clone technique and substitution technique flawlessly. Iruka commended her on her success and sent her back with the other students before calling out the next student. Naruto Namikaze. Naruto stepped forward. Is that all I had to do? He asked skeptically. Iruka eyed him exasperatedly. Those 3 are the required techniques. If you know any other, you may perform them as well. Naruto grinned at that, and easily blew through the academy techniques, surprising the class when he transformed into the 4th Hokage. Then, Naruto started another string of hand seals with a grin. Earth style. Mud wall. A thick wall of dirt and rock rose up between Naruto and the rest of the class, causing the kids to gasp in awe. Naruto collapsed to one knee as the wall stopped growing. Whoa, never got it that big before. Iruka ran over to the kneeling Naruto and put a hand on his shoulder. That was amazing. How did you learn that? Naruto looked down. My uncle Jiraiya taught me, but he's gone now. Of course, Iruka had heard of Jiraiya's death, so he was not surprised to hear this. Hold on, there's one more thing I want to try. Naruto pushed himself up and Iruka backed away in surprise. Naruto held his hand out and focused as chakra started to build up in his hand. The blue chakra started to swirl around when it exploded, sending Naruto flying a few feet away. Iruka ran over to him, stunned that he would try something so stupid. Naruto, are you okay? The blonde boy groaned and opened his eyes, giving Iruka a slow nod. Iruka stared at him a second before sighing. Was that what I think it was? Naruto just nodded again. Still can't do it, he muttered in frustration. He pushed himself up and retreated back to the group of students, all whom were staring at him with awe and a little fear. Kairi tugged on his sleeve. What was that? She asked softly. Are you okay? Naruto nodded. Yay, I'm fine. He didn't answer her first question, and she didn't ask again. The look on his face had stopped her from trying to speak to him. Alright class, time to go back inside. The children started to file in reluctantly at Iruka's command, Naruto and Kairi being the last to go in. The rest of the day had been less exciting, mostly because of Naruto's solemn mood, but Iruka had been correct when he had predicted that Naruto would take the number 1 spot. His tactical skills had been superb for a boy his age, and while his academic skills weren't perfect, they were certainly enough to establish his place at the top. The other students were envious of the boy, but there was nothing they could do about it. He was a prodigy, he was just better. So at the end of the day, Naruto had left the academy with Kakashi, who was extremely proud of the boy for getting the top spot. Naruto told him all about the various skills they assessed, and how he fared in each one. Kakashi agreed to help Naruto with a few of his skills, and Naruto was ecstatic to receive any kind of training from Kakashi. When they got to Jiraiya's estate, Kakashi left Naruto with a wave, departing to do whatever Kakashi does. Naruto walked upstairs, and into Jiraiya's room. Everything was just as he left it. The bed wasn't made at all, clothes littered the floor, as well as books and scrolls. Sadness overtook Naruto as memories of Jiraiya bubbled up in his mind, But he forced them down and told himself he wouldn't cry. He walked through the room, investigating everything in the room. Jiraiya was bound to have something important in here. Something that Minato had left to give to his son. Naruto was sure of it. But now that Jiraiya was dead, he had to find it on his own. So he searched through every drawer, crack and door until finally he was at the last room, the closest. Naruto walked in, surprised at how small it was. It was no more than 4 feet deep, and it was square, and it was virtually empty, except for a box on the ground. Naruto knelt down and opened the box, smiling at what he saw. He pulled out a book labeled, Sealing Jutsu Notes of Minato Namikaze, an oddly shaped kunai with a yellow seal tag on it, 4 or 5 scrolls, an odd ninja village headband with a swirl in the middle, and a note. Naruto, I don't know how long it took you to find this, but if you found it that means that I'm dead. But don't be sad kid, you'll be alright. I guess I wrote this to tell you all the things I would never have the chance to tell you, because there's so much you should know. I guess I'll talk about all the stuff in the box first. The book was written by your dad, as you might have guessed. That book holds the most extensive, specific and powerful fuinjutsu techniques you will find in the elemental nations. If you study that book, you'll become a seal master in no time. Don't blow yourself up though, sometimes that'll happen if you screw up. The kunai is the weapon that made your father what he was, the key to the flying thunder god technique. One day you'll master that too, and maybe you'll even improve it. I know your dad wanted to, and he would want you to surpass him. The headband was your mother's. It was of the hidden Whirlpool village, a village that no longer exists. It was destroyed many years ago during the Second Shinobi World War right after your mother came to the Leaf Village. The history of the attack is almost non-existent, and no one really knows who did it. People have suspected the hidden mist for years, but there's never been proof. Your mother was part of Whirlpool's greatest clan, the Uzumaki clan. They were known for their mastery of fuinjutsu and their longevity. Kushina once told me that the leader of her village had been over 200 years old. Pretty crazy, right? The scrolls are for various techniques. One of them is the Rasengan, in case the only living person who knows it dies. That would be Kakashi. Only try to teach it to yourself if he's gone though kid. You'll hurt yourself if you try alone. Another one is the scroll with all the details of the Flying Thunder God technique, but you shouldn't touch that until you've read your father's book a few hundred times. The rest are things your father and mother left behind, things that you will need one day. I've never opened them, I could really never bring myself to. They're not for my eyes anyway. Now we'll get to what I'm leaving you. All of my money and my house obviously go to you, not that you care about that. I leave the Icha Icha series to you, but you better not screw it up kid. That was my masterpiece. And lastly I guess the Toad contract. The old man should have the scroll, so just show him this note and he'll give it to you. Whatever you do, just don't summon Gamabunta on your first try. He might get angry. Now that I've told you a bunch of good things, it's time I told you something that only the Hokage and myself know. The attack of the 9 tails was not a natural disaster, as the textbooks say. It was orchestrated by a single man who attacked your mother and killed her on the night of your birth. He also used a single Sharingan eye to control it and use it as a weapon against the leaf. Your father fought him that night, but he escaped unharmed. I was never able to figure out who this man was in my life, but maybe you can one day. I just hope you're strong enough the day you do. I guess the last thing I want to say is just don't give up. Your father's last request to me was to protect you and give you the life you should have had. I tried, but I guess if you're reading this I failed at that, huh? Just know that your father, your mother and I all believe in you, and we know you're stronger than anyone else. Jiraiya. Naruto stared at the note for a long time, taking in the message. So there was a man with a Sharingan eye behind the 9 tails attack. And his dad couldn't defeat him, which meant he was powerful. But that didn't matter, because he would surpass Jiraiya and his father and become the strongest Hokage ever. Mom, Dad, Uncle Jiraiya, just watch. I'll make you all proud. It wasn't that he didn't trust Kakashi, it's just he was the only guy with a single Sharingan Naruto had ever seen. Which is why he was following him around the Leaf Village as he blindly walked through the crowds and read Jiraiya's book. Finally, because Kakashi had known Naruto was following him the whole time, the Jonin suddenly appeared behind Naruto and grabbed him by his collar. What's with the security detail pipsqueak? Naruto frowned at him. How did you find me? Kakashi laughed. It's gonna be a long time before you can get by me. I hope at least. Kakashi chuckled and scratched his head. So, why are you following me? Naruto fidgeted and avoided Kakashi's gaze and sighed. Were you responsible for the Nine Tails attack on the Leaf Village? Kakashi blinked. Naruto, are you insane? The attack was a natural disaster. Naruto shook his head. Nah. Uncle Jiraiya left me a note saying that a man with a single Sharingan eye killed my mother and unleashed the fox on the village. Kakashi's eyes bulged before he looked around quickly, hoping no one heard that, and flickered away to his apartment with Naruto. Are you serious? Naruto nodded. Kakashi rubbed his face and ran his hand through his hair. That is, does the Hokage know? Naruto nodded. Does anyone else? Naruto shook his head. I don't really know what to say. This is incredible. Someone actually controlled the Nine Tails. Did he get away? Naruto nodded and stared at Kakashi hopefully. So, it wasn't you? Kakashi laughed and patted Naruto's head. No, it wasn't. If it had been, I wouldn't have gotten away. Sensei was always one step ahead of me. Naruto smiled. Good. I'm sorry, I thought it was you, Kakashi. The silver-haired Jonin just shook his head. Don't worry about it. I honestly thought I was the only one with a single Sharingan too. Kakashi started to think about the other man with the Sharingan, and he got so wrapped up in his thoughts that Naruto had to shout to get his attention. Kakashi. Kakashi looked down at Naruto. Were you saying something? Naruto frowned. Don't pull that guy crap on me. Kakashi laughed mirthfully at that, and Naruto groaned. Will you pay attention? Kakashi quelled his laughter and bent down to Naruto's level. Sorry. What's up, kid? Naruto stared at him intensely. Will you help me find this man? For my dad? Kakashi's eye widened, but he smiled and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Of course. We'll find him and make him pay for what he did to Sensei. Naruto nodded with determination, and Kakashi briefly saw Minato's face in the boy. It was gone after a second, but he had no doubt what it meant. Naruto awoke suddenly, hearing his alarm clock blaring right next to his ear. He quickly turned it off, preventing himself from breaking yet another alarm clock. Sometimes when Naruto woke up, he would chuck the alarm clock against the wall out of anger for waking him up. And he had gone through many alarm clocks that way, so he really didn't feel like buying another. Naruto sat up and groaned, realizing what day it was. It was the first day of his 4th year in the academy today, and he wasn't all that excited. He had wanted to graduate early, knowing that Kakashi had done that at his age, but Hiruzen denied him, stating that Kakashi had been in the academy during the war, and that it was different. Naruto didn't understand, but he figured that the Hokage was right anyway. So now he had to deal with a bunch of kids who had no idea what they were doing. When Hiruzen told him he would be placed in a class with kids his age, he nearly yelled at the Hokage. It was ridiculous to put someone of his caliber into a class full of first-year kids. Well, except for one other kid. Sasuke Uchiha had entered the academy just 1 year after Naruto, and immediately they had become rivals. Sasuke was always challenging Naruto to test his strength, and both boys were pretty evenly matched. Although most of the time, Naruto was the winner of their spars. Since they were the same age, and close to the same skill level, they had constantly been paired together during drills and lessons at the academy, and because of that they had formed a bond of begrudging friendship. Sasuke had a tiny bit of admiration for the boy, just for his work ethic alone, and a healthy respect of the boy's strength, which he had learned through experience. Naruto on the other hand genuinely liked Sasuke, and considered him to be his best friend. They trained together weekly, and both were getting stronger and helping the other every day. But other than Sasuke, Naruto was sure there was no one in this class that would be of interest to him. He just hoped his training outside would continue to get more intense. Kakashi had taken Naruto under his wing after Jiraiya died, taking over the duty of training the son of the 4th Hokage. He felt he was obligated to, after all, the 4th was his sensei. So, for the past 4 years, Kakashi had been training Naruto, watching him turn into the ninja he was meant to be. At 7 years old, he was already Chunin level in every aspect of his skills. His ability to learn techniques so easily, due to the shadow clone technique, was amazing, breaking the boundaries of time. Kakashi had immediately taught Naruto the shadow clone technique. In fact, it was the first thing he taught him. Flashback. A new technique? Really? Awesome. Naruto shouted in excitement. If Kakashi was going to teach him a new technique right off the bat, then he would probably be an awesome sensei. Yes, it's a technique that I believe you will be able to master. It's called the shadow clone technique. Naruto blinked. Is it a clone of my shadow? Kakashi almost burst out laughing, but even his mask couldn't hide his smile. No Naruto, it isn't. It's a very useful technique. Just watch. Kakashi made the single hand seal and Naruto was shocked to see an identical Kakashi, with a shadow, standing right next to the original. Whoa, is that solid? Both Kakashis nodded. Awesome, can I try? One Kakashi stepped forward. Yes, but let me explain what to do first. Did you see the hand sign I made? Naruto nodded. Good, that's the only one. Now, when you mold your chakra for this technique, I want you to put in a good amount, about half of your reserves. Can you do that? Naruto nodded again. Alright, if I'm correct, you should get around 200 or so clones. Try it out. Naruto brought his hands into the single seal and his face scrunched up in concentration. Shadow clone technique. There was a massive plume of smoke that appeared around the entire area. Kakashi's eyes widened, his Sharingan already seeing the number of clones there were. 600, that's incredible. This kid could be his own army. When the smoke cleared, Naruto was grinning. Do you see all of these clones? Flashback end. The other reason he taught Naruto the technique was because he knew that in theory, if one could produce a massive amount of shadow clones, then the time of training could be exponentially cut down. What would take a normal man weeks could take him hours, months could take him days, and years could take him weeks. It was truly incredible, and Kakashi even believed it to be better than his Sharingan. There was one other thing that took up the rest of Naruto's time. Ever since he had found his father's notes on Fuinjutsu, he became engrossed in it, and even obsessed with it. He wasn't smart enough to comprehend much of the complicated stuff, but the most basic things he understood, and he had even started practicing on his own. While he knew it was extremely dangerous to do so, the boy didn't know if anyone else who was up to the caliber of Jiraiya or his father had been in Fuinjutsu. When he had asked Kakashi about it, the Jonin had admitted while he had some knowledge, it was not nearly as much as his sensei's. He still agreed to help Naruto with anything Fuinjutsu related, for the sake of his safety more than anything else. The rest of the day would be boring, unless he could convince Sasuke to cut class, which he had only succeeded in doing once. Naruto sighed as he pulled his shirt on over his head. This year was gonna be boring. We're not cutting the first day, Naruto. Naruto's expression fell and his shoulders drooped. Why not? It's not like we're missing anything important. The first day is one of the most important. Naruto sighed and rolled his eyes. Fine Sasuke, we'll go to class. But I guarantee halfway through the day you'll wonder why you even went. Sasuke shrugged. Whatever. Naruto frowned and stopped in his tracks, earning a confused look from the Uchiha. What are you doing? Is that the head of the Hyuga clan over there? Sasuke looked to where Naruto was now pointing, and sure enough Hiashi Hyuga was walking down the road, holding the hand of his daughter. It looks like it is. Does that mean there's another clan heir in our class? Naruto nodded. I guess it does. And a Hyuga heir too. Looks like you have some competition. Sasuke scoffed. As if. The Uchiha are superior to the Hyuga in every way. Naruto stared at Sasuke for a moment before raucous laughter erupted from his mouth. What are you laughing at? Naruto slowly calmed himself down, still chuckling a bit and wiping a tear from his eye. Dude, you sounded just like your dad. Sasuke's eyes widened, before a small smile formed and a chuckle escaped his mouth. I didn't I? Naruto smiled. All you need is the permanent scowl and the angry disposition and you're there. Sasuke scowled, and Naruto started laughing, pointing at his face. There it is. Sasuke grunted and turned away, leaving Naruto behind. Naruto caught up quickly, and together the two friends made their way to the academy. My name is Iruka, and first I would just like to welcome you all to the academy. Iruka looked over his class with a wide smile on his face. It was going to be an interesting class this year. When he had first seen the roll sheet, he almost spat out his coffee at the number of clan heirs that were in the class. 7 was an absurd amount of clan heirs, and the clans they hailed from were some of the strongest in the Leaf Village. The Nara, Akamichi, Yamanaka, Aburame, Inuzuka, Hyuga and Uchiha all had heirs in this class, and Iruka would be damned if this class didn't produce some of the finest ninja of their generation. Plus Naruto, the son of a former Hokage, this class was completely stacked. Of course, Iruka already knew Naruto and Sasuke from their previous years in the academy, having been their teacher in the previous years as well. When Naruto had joined his class 4 years ago, and Sasuke 3, Iruka grew prouder and prouder of the two boys each day as their skills soared to levels unprecedented for kids their age. At 7, both were easily Chunin level, and both could now beat him in a spar. Naruto still claimed the number 1 spot, while Sasuke nipped at his heels in the 2nd spot. When Iruka heard that instead of graduating the two boys would be put in a class of their peers to get better acquainted with them, he had been ecstatic. They were two of his favorite students, although he could never admit that out loud, and teaching them again was sure to be interesting. And maybe it would inspire these kids with great potential to become the best ninja they could be. For the next 5 years, Naruto and Sasuke sighed as Iruka went into his beginning of the year speech. They had heard many variants of it over the years, and so they had no need to pay attention to it. Naruto looked to his left at the other boy who sat at the table. He had spiky, black hair that was tied into a ponytail that stuck up in the air, but the boy's face could not be seen, for it was currently planted on the table. Naruto cracked a smile and poked the boy in his side. Huh? The boy's head popped up, and he lazily glanced over at Naruto, who was beaming at him. Sleeping on the first day? That doesn't seem like something a ninja would do. The boy was about to retort when Sasuke did it for him. You slept on the first day for the past 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. Naruto frowned and turned to Sasuke. Why would you say that? Now I look bad. Sasuke shrugged, and the black-haired boy started to laugh. Naruto turned back around. What's so funny? The boy raised an eyebrow and casually shrugged. You said it yourself. It doesn't seem like something a ninja would do. Sasuke chuckled from behind Naruto, and the blonde frowned. Whatever. The frown was replaced with a smile. Well, I'm Naruto, and I'm gonna be the best Hokage there ever was. The boy blinked at Naruto's declaration. Are you Naruto Namikaze? Naruto nodded. I see. So then that means you're the Hokage's son. Another nod. Troublesome. Why is that troublesome? Naruto asked. Of all the people I could have sat next to, I had to sit next to the strongest academy student in years. I'd call that troublesome. Naruto cocked his head. You know who I am? The boy nodded. Everyone knows who you are. My father told me all about you too. You started the academy at age 4, and the only reason you haven't graduated is because the Leaf Village is at peace right now. Naruto seemed a little shocked that his name was so famous. And if you're Naruto, then you must be Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke nodded at this. I am. Although I'm impressed you understand why Naruto and I haven't graduated. Not many academy students have knowledge of how a ninja village really works. The boy shrugged. My dad is always telling me things, saying I need to learn about the village to be a good ninja and clan head one day. It's more troublesome than anything else if you ask me. Naruto nodded at this. I know what you mean. My uncle Jiraiya was always telling me stuff like that. I didn't care about it before, but now I guess I kinda see why it's important. The boy shrugged. In a way it is. But I don't have to worry about that right now. Sasuke nodded. I don't believe I caught your name. Shikamaru Nara. Oh, so you're the heir of the Nara clan? Shikamaru nodded. Troublesome as it is, I am. Naruto. Sasuke. Shikamaru. Be quiet back there. The three boys jumped at Iruka's sudden shout, and they immediately turned forward. Naruto and Sasuke knew Iruka was not one to be messed with, and when he brought his wrath down upon you, it was not pleasant. So they quieted down for now, deciding to save their conversation for lunch. Eventually, the day ended, and Naruto was excited to leave the dreadful prison. When Iruka dismissed them, Naruto sprinted out of the classroom, with Sasuke close behind. They were both itching to train, especially after that long day in the academy. They arrived at Jiraiya's estate, immediately heading for the training ground. As usual, they started with some light warm-ups, before they got ready to spar. So what's the score now anyway? Naruto asked as they got into their stances. 29-30. Sasuke mumbled. Well then get ready to fall even farther behind. Naruto shouted with a grin. I'll make you eat those words. Sasuke charged in at Naruto, pulling out 2 kunai as he did. Naruto took his own kunai out just in time to block Sasuke's first strike, and he quickly ducked under his follow-up slash. Sasuke swung his leg at Naruto, who blocked with his arm. Naruto then grabbed Sasuke's leg and threw him high into the air. Flipping in midair, Sasuke landed gracefully and rushed back at Naruto, attacking him with a flurry of slashes and strikes. The blonde was pushed onto the defensive, blocking any strike with his kunai, and weaving through any he could not. Sasuke pressed with aggressiveness and speed, finally forcing an opening and kicking Naruto away. The blonde tumbled through the grass and rolled into a tree. Naruto rose with a groan, and Sasuke ran at him. Sasuke threw both his kunai, and Naruto yelped before barely substituting with a log, saving him from pain. He dropped down behind Sasuke, forming two shadow clones as he landed. The three Narutos charged at Sasuke, who jumped straight into the air. He threw 3 kunai at each Naruto, but only one made contact. The other two jumped after Sasuke, launching kicks and punches at the Uchiha. Sasuke couldn't keep up with both Narutos, so he closed his eyes and focused his chakra for a second. In a moment, his Sharingan activated, and Naruto's attacks were clear to him. Sasuke easily adjusted, and soon his pace matched both Naruto's. Sasuke weaved through Naruto's attacks expertly, and kicked the last clone, dispelling it instantly. Naruto jumped away, not wanting to go up against a Sharingan in hand-to-hand combat. Seeing Naruto's retreat, Sasuke flashed through hand seals. Fire style. Grand fireball technique. A large swirling ball of fire flew towards Naruto, who finished a sequence of hand signs as the fireball closed in. Earth style. Mud wall. Using a technique taught to him by his dead godfather, Naruto saved himself with a wall of mud that shot up from the ground. Sasuke leapt over the wall, hurling a handful of shuriken at the blonde. Naruto jumped away, only to find Sasuke in front of him, kunai poised to stab. Naruto ducked under the thrust, and pulled Sasuke forward by his outstretched arm. He then jumped into the air and planted both of his feet on Sasuke's chest, sending him flying with a dropkick. When the Uchiha collapsed, Naruto was crouching over him, a kunai inches away from his forehead. Sasuke groaned in resignation, and Naruto broke into a wide smile. Now it's 31-29. Sasuke glared at his friend until a hand was thrust in his face, and he took it with a smirk. Naruto pulled the Uchiha to his feet, and both of them decided to call it a day. Since Naruto had won, he convinced Sasuke that he deserved a free bowl of ramen. Sasuke hesitantly agreed, knowing one bowl could easily turn into 5 or 6. With a reluctant sigh from Sasuke, and a cheerful yelp from Naruto, the two geniuses departed the training grounds and made their way to the village. Along the way to Ichiraku's, Naruto noticed a lone boy in the middle of the park, lying on his back and gazing at the sky. "Hey Sasuke, is that Shikamaru?" Sasuke looked at where Naruto's finger pointed and nodded. "Yay, it's him." Naruto started walking towards the boy. "Hey, Shikamaru." Shikamaru lazily raised his head, sighing to himself as Naruto approached. "I knew you were going to be troublesome." "What was that?" "Nothing." Sasuke walked up behind Naruto, greeting Shikamaru with a nod. "What are you doing?" Naruto asked, taking a seat next to the Nara boy. "Staring at the clouds." Shikamaru simply stated, so Naruto shrugged and lay down next to the boy. "What are you doing?" Shikamaru asked. "Staring at the clouds." Shikamaru sighed, realizing he couldn't get rid of the blonde boy, and went back to cloud gazing. Sasuke shook his head, but lay down anyway, preferring to relax rather than empty his wallet on ramen. The three boys laid there for a while, occasionally commenting on the shape of a cloud. Time passed and soon dusk set in. The sky glowed yellow and orange, and Shikamaru finally sat up. "It's getting late." Naruto and Sasuke sat up as well, nodding at Shikamaru's statement. "That was really relaxing," Naruto exclaimed as he jumped up and stretched his arms. "Do you do that every day?" "Yay, I like watching the clouds. They're so free and lazy, floating through the sky like that. Sometimes I wish I could just float through the sky aimlessly. It would be much less troublesome than being a ninja." Naruto cocked his head. "You're really lazy, aren't you?" Shikamaru smiled at Naruto before walking away and waving over his shoulder. The two boys watched him lazily mosey down the road until they couldn't see him anymore. "He's a little weird," Sasuke stated casually. "Yay, but so are we. And I like him." Naruto turned to Sasuke. "Yay, he's alright." Sasuke let out a sigh. I should be getting home. Naruto nodded, and Sasuke turned around and started walking away. Naruto decided he would stay in the park a little longer, so he laid back down on the ground and fixed his gaze on the sky. With all due respect, Lord Hokage, what you ask of me is insane. Hiruzen sighed as he took a puff of his pipe. Normally, an Anbu operative would never question an order from the Hokage, and if one did he would be immediately removed from the organization. But the third understood the ridiculousness of his request, and the ANBU's reaction was well justified. I'm aware my request is highly sensitive and quite frankly brutal. Then the Anbu paused, and Hiruzen waved his hand. You may speak freely, Itachi. The Anbu removed his mask, and the stoic face of Itachi stared back at the Hokage. Sir, you are asking me to kill my entire clan. How could one live with themselves? Hiruzen shook his head. It is a heinous crime, I know. But my advisors are vehemently pushing this solution. The Uchiha have become restless of late, and I fear the gears of war are cranking. A civil war is the worst possible outcome of this problem, and it must be avoided. I do not wish to see one of our most prominent clans' demise, and I am open to any suggestions that you may have. But the truth is this rebellion must be quashed before it starts. You have been a very valuable mole, and not using the information you have brought me to organize a preemptive strike would be a waste. Itachi looked down at the ground and Hiruzen sighed. I am just as opposed to this plan as you are, Itachi. But as Hokage I must make unpopular decisions for the good of the village. And so you think massacring the Uchiha is for the good of the village? Itachi asked suddenly, snapping his head up. Of course not. The Uchiha clan is a clan feared around the elemental nations, and their strength is a pillar of support for the village. But do you think a civil war is better? Not only Uchiha, but countless Leaf Ninja would lose their lives if conflict broke out. Itachi clenched his fists. That doesn't justify it. Hiruzen looked at Itachi sadly. It never will. But as Hokage I will shoulder the burden for the sake of the village. A hopeless look made its way to Itachi's face, and Hiruzen noted this was the most emotion he had ever seen out of Itachi. I will give you 2 weeks to find a solution on your side, while I try to find a solution on mine. I will stall my advisors for as long as I can, but they are persistent. In 2 weeks I will call you in for a meeting where the mission will be formally assigned to you. Itachi nodded. Thank you, Lord Hokage. Please understand, Itachi, I truly wish to see the end of this conflict without bloodshed. Death is a plague that I have fought with all my strength ever since I took this seat, but death is insatiable. It always wins. I will do everything in my power to see that it does not win this time. Hiruzen stood up and turned his back to Itachi and gazed out the window. I am getting old, Itachi. I've watched over this village longer than any Hokage before me, and even longer than my successor. I have seen conflict on a greater scale than you can imagine, and yet when it comes to the village, I feel as if I am a small child. I love each and every member of this village, but even my love and determination cannot protect them all. Hiruzen turned to Itachi with a sorrowful expression on his face. In the end we're ninja, tools of war and destruction, and our profession comes with the darkest secrets and the bloodiest jobs. Even the greatest ninja can fall into the abyss of insanity if they think too much. Keep your mind at ease, Itachi, and do not let your will of fire burn out, because yours shines brighter than anyone I know. Itachi took a deep breath. Thank you, Lord Hokage. Truly. Hiruzen smiled at the young Anbu captain. Do not hesitate to come to me with your concerns, Itachi. We strive for the same outcome, and I will help any way I can. Itachi nodded. You are dismissed, Weasel. Itachi put his mask on, and in a second his presence was erased from the room. Hiruzen collapsed in his chair and groaned. He would need more than tobacco to recover from that. Sasuke frowned as Itachi walked out the door. Once again, he had rebuffed Sasuke's request to train. But something about him seemed off to Sasuke. Itachi was certainly a master of his emotions, but Sasuke was his brother, and he could always tell when something was bothering his brother. Itachi had barely been home in the past 2 weeks, and when he cut off all communication with his mother and father. The reason for his recent absence was Anbu business, as Itachi stated, and while that was a valid excuse, Sasuke couldn't help but think something else was affecting his behavior. No, he knew something else was behind it, but he couldn't figure out what it was. All Sasuke could tell was that there was a certain sense of urgency to Itachi. Itachi wasn't the only one acting oddly. Fugaku, Sasuke's father, had also been acting strangely lately. He skipped the family dinners almost daily now, and there was always a look of contemplation of his face. Members of the Uchiha police force dropped by frequently, as well as a few of the clan elders, and would be locked in Fugaku's office for hours at a time. While they could just be discussing clan affairs, with Itachi's recent behavior, Sasuke couldn't help but think there was a connection. And he'd be damned if he didn't figure it out. Seeing as the academy had off today, Sasuke decided to find Naruto and tell him about his brother and father's odd behavior. The blonde would definitely be interested in finding out what was going on, and Sasuke was counting on that. After exiting the Uchiha district and walking through the village, Sasuke arrived at Jiraiya's estate. He pounded on the door and waited for a few minutes until the door opened slowly. Naruto was standing in the doorway, rubbing his eye and dressed in his pajamas. "What are you doing here?" Naruto murmured sleepily. "It's 8 o'clock. I know what time it is. Get dressed, we have things to do." Naruto sighed and shut the door. 5 minutes later he came back out, fully dressed and slightly less sleepy. "What are we doing?" Naruto asked as they walked away from the house. "Itachi and father have been acting strangely lately, and I want to figure out what's going on." A devilish grin spread across Naruto's face. "So you want to spy on them?" Sasuke nodded. "This is going to be fun." Sasuke sighed. "It's not going to be easy, you know." Naruto shrugged. "I've hidden from Anbu before, it isn't that hard. And even Itachi can't see through my invisibility technique. We still have to be careful." Naruto nodded, and the two boys headed for the Uchiha district. "Father," while his expression was stoic, on the inside Itachi felt like nothing more than a small child. He was far too young to be dealing with this, and yet this was what the cost of being a great ninja was. They called it a blessing. It disgusted Itachi. "Every night for the past 2 weeks you have tried to convince me to stop our revolution in every way you can." Fugaku's stare was ice cold, and it bared the weight of a whale. "Don't tell me you're nervous." If the head of the Uchiha clan ever showed emotion, he would have sneered then. "The Hokage does not need to die. Neither do our clansmen. He is old, he won't occupy the position for much longer. With my pedigree, I could become the next Hokage. Then the Uchiha would have an equal say." Fugaku scoffed. "Don't get son. You're light years away from Hokage level. Then why am I the one who's putting the knife to his neck?" Fugaku could not think of an immediate answer, so there was a pregnant pause before he retorted. "You are foolish if you think the council would allow an Uchiha Hokage. This argument is over. Either you are with us, or you should make yourself disappear." Itachi stood in stiff shock and his father left him with that. He had never said anything like that before. For the first time, Itachi felt a tear slide down his cheek. Naruto and Sasuke stood stone still against a wall. In front of them, a meeting between Fugaku and a few of the Uchiha elders, as well as some members of the police force, was taking place. Fugaku led the meeting, and currently they were debating something that had literally shocked Naruto and Sasuke to their cores. When they first decided to intrude on the meeting, they had followed the clan members into the room, slipping in under the guise of Naruto's invisibility technique. Everything had gone along smoothly, until the purpose of the meeting was brought up. When Fugaku brought up a plan of a rebellion against the Hokage, the two boys had almost yelled in shock, only keeping quiet because of their current situation. And now with every word uttered by the Uchiha in the room, Sasuke felt his respect for his clan plummet. As they watched, the meeting continued, its members completely unaware of the intruders. "Itachi's reports have been scarce of late, Fugaku." One of the elders stated. "We are in the final stages of our plan. We need all the intel we can get. Itachi has been extremely busy as of late. Since his recent promotion, his mission load has increased, and he barely has time to relay large pieces of information. Do not worry about it much, we will have all of the information we need." A few of the elders nodded, but one cleared his throat. "If it is as you say, Fugaku, then everything should pan out perfectly." "But," the elder narrowed his eyes, "what if it is not?" Fugaku's eyes narrowed as well. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything, but I am questioning whether or not Itachi is the right man for the job." "You speak out of line." Fugaku stated with barely masked venom. "Do I? I have nothing against your son Fugaku, but this is a very delicate operation. There can be no errors. I assure you my son's skill is more than enough to complete this mission." There are few jonin in this village that can match my son's skill. It is not his skill that I am calling into question. The elder stated cryptically. Fugaku looked at him in confusion, before anger flashed across his face. You dare call my son a traitor? Fugaku shifted to stand, but one of the elders grabbed his arm. Peace, Fugaku. Fugaku glared at the man restraining him, before shifting to glare at the other elder. Explain yourself, Katsuro. The Anbu are loyal to the Hokage first. Who's to say he isn't a double agent? Fugaku was now physically restraining himself. My son is. You keep defending him, Fugaku, but do you not wonder the same? You said he was busy with Anbu work, so who's to say he isn't meeting with the Hokage right now? What if his recent work has been his betrayal? Enough. I will not let you insult my family in my house. My son is loyal to the Uchiha and only the Uchiha. Killing intent was leaking out of Fugaku now, and the elders eyed him with a hint of fear. Easy, Fugaku. Just relax. Fugaku looked at the elder who was trying to calm him down. He took a deep breath and let out a harsh sigh. Itachi will not fail his mission. When the time comes, he will assassinate the Hokage without question and without fail. There is nothing to discuss about it. The elders stood up. Well then, this meeting is over. By your leave, Fugaku? Fugaku nodded and the elders filed out of the room, closing the door behind them. Sasuke disconnected himself from Naruto and stepped forward, glaring into the surprised eyes of his father. Naruto, who was baffled by Sasuke's course of action, just sighed and cancelled his technique. Sasuke, what are you? Traitor, Sasuke said angrily, cutting his father off. How could you betray the village? There are many things that you do not understand. So what? What right does that give you to betray the village? Let alone assassinate the Hokage? Sasuke's Sharingan had activated in his rage, and Fugaku activated his own. Enough, Sasuke. You are too young to understand. But Itachi isn't? Why would you bring him into this? What do you hope to accomplish? Fugaku stared down at his son, his stoic face giving nothing away. Sasuke, I will not tell you again. This does not concern you. Now please leave me. Sasuke clenched his fists and gnashed his teeth. You are not my father. With that he exited the room, Naruto scrambling behind him. Fugaku was taken aback by Sasuke's declaration, and a wave of guilt washed over him. Itachi. Naruto followed Sasuke as they walked through the streets of the village. He wasn't really sure what to do. Sasuke was clearly rattled by what has just taken place. When Naruto had been told they were spying on Fugaku, he was expecting something less dramatic than a coup d'état. Where are we going? Naruto finally asked. To find Itachi. Sasuke replied flatly. Naruto shrugged and continued to follow Sasuke, until they reached the Hokage's office. The Hokage was smoking his pipe when they barged into his office, and he raised an eyebrow at them. Naruto, Sasuke, what a pleasure. Please come in. The last part was unnecessary, seeing as they were already in. Where is Itachi? The Hokage was surprised at Sasuke's forwardness. Usually Naruto did the talking. I cannot disclose the location of. Sasuke sighed and looked at Naruto, who stepped forward. Gramps? This is kinda important. We really need to find Itachi. Can you please make an exception just this once? Hiruzen stared quizzically at the boys, before making a gesture with his hand. Itachi silently appeared behind the boys. What is it, little brother? Sasuke turned around and glared at Itachi. So you're a traitor too? Hiruzen seemed taken aback by this declaration. What nonsense is this? Itachi asked. I spied on one of father's meetings. Hiruzen's eyes went wide, and Itachi's did the same behind his mask. Immediately, the Hokage activated his privacy seals. How could you, Itachi? Itachi tore his mask off. What did you hear? Everything. I heard that the Uchiha planned to rebel against the Hokage and start a civil war. And I heard you're supposed to assassinate the Hokage. Itachi looked over at the Hokage, who had a stressed look on his face. You're a try. Silence, Sasuke. Itachi interrupted. Itachi is no traitor, Sasuke. The younger Uchiha turned to the Hokage. I have known of this development for quite some time now, thanks to your brother. Sasuke turned back to Itachi, who nodded. So you really are double agent then? Itachi cocked his head. Did you hear that in the meeting? Sasuke nodded. That poses a problem, the Hokage stated. If they are suspicious of you, then things could get ugly. Be careful, Itachi. Itachi nodded. What do we do about them? Well, I'd like to thank them for telling us about this first of all. I'd also like you two to understand that this is an SS class secret. You cannot tell anyone about this. The two boys nodded. What are you going to do? Sasuke asked. That's none of your concern, Sasuke. Itachi answered quickly. How can you say that? It's my clan too. You are too young for things of this nature. Stop treating me like a kid. I brought you important information, didn't I? I have a right to know. Itachi stared at Sasuke. Fine, you want to know what's going to happen? Itachi looked over at the Hokage, who leaned forward. Sasuke, your brother and I have been working tirelessly for weeks to find a way to end this conflict without bloodshed. Sasuke's eyes widened. Is that why you've been so busy, brother? Itachi nodded. Your brother has been trying to convince your father that a coup is not the way to solve this. Unfortunately, he has not been successful. So what now? Sasuke asked. Tonight I will undertake a mission that will put an end to this conflict before it begins. And what is that? Putting an end to the Uchiha clan. Naruto and Sasuke's faces broke out in astonishment. What? They both exclaimed. Unfortunately, that is what it has come to. Hiruzen stated. We cannot risk a civil war, not when we have finally achieved our status quo once again. Quote, that's. Sasuke looked at the Hokage and Itachi, then at the ground. I understand. Hiruzen and Itachi were now visibly shocked. You understand? Itachi asked. Yes. Our clan is a clan of traitors. And traitors must be punished. Hiruzen nodded. Yes, that is what we decided. But how are you going to do it? Sasuke asked. I will go through the clan compound under the cover of night and assassinate them all. Then I will leave the village as a missing ninja. Missing ninja? But you can't leave. I must, Sasuke. I cannot come back to the village after murdering our entire clan. Sasuke looked at Itachi with fear and sadness in his eyes. But, I'll be all alone. What am I going to do? Just be strong, little brother. Maybe one day we will meet again. Sasuke lunged at his big brother and wrapped his arms around him. I'll miss you, big brother. Itachi let a rare smile spread across his face. I'll miss you too, Sasuke. But for now, I must prepare for tonight. Stay at Naruto's tonight. I do not want you to witness anything. Sasuke nodded, and after he stepped back, Itachi disappeared. Both boys looked at the Hokage, who smiled. Well, that was quite tiring. Who's up for some ramen? Naruto exclaimed his approval, while Sasuke smiled and nodded. Hiruzen led the boys out of his office, only wondering how two 7-year-olds could have spied on the Uchiha clan head. News of the Uchiha massacre spread through the village like wildfire. Everyone was talking about how the Uchiha prodigy Itachi had gone insane and murdered his entire clan in cold blood. Sasuke was furious that his brother was being slandered, but the Hokage had sworn him and Naruto to secrecy, so there was nothing he could do. Relax, Sasuke, they don't know the truth. Sasuke looked at Naruto, who was walking with his hands behind his head. They were on their way to the academy, and Sasuke knew the worst was yet to come. When they finally arrived, mostly everyone was staring at Sasuke, whispering something into someone's ear. Only one person wasn't, and that's because his face was planted on the table. Hey, Shikamaru, wake up! Naruto poked the Nara in his head, and he lazily glared at Naruto. Every day you insist on waking me up. Why is that? Naruto smiled. Because if you slept then you wouldn't get to talk to us. Troublesome. Naruto frowned. So, Sasuke, how are you? Sasuke shrugged. Alright, why do you ask? You know why I asked. But alright isn't the answer I was expecting. Sasuke shook his head. You wouldn't understand. I don't want to talk about it. Shikamaru shrugged. Fine by me. I was just being friendly. Naruto smiled at this. See, we are friends. Shikamaru sighed and put his head back down. Hey, don't ignore your friends. Friends let friends sleep, was the muffled reply that came from Shikamaru. Naruto huffed and crossed his arms. Whatever. Sasuke watched the exchange with a smirk. Naruto was right. They were friends, and Sasuke knew he would need them to get through this ordeal. Hell, their bickering alone was entertaining enough to put a smile on his face for years. But most importantly, it was a semblance of normalcy, and that was all he needed. Shikamaru, you should train with us today. Shikamaru's head shot up at Sasuke's suggestion. You want me to train with you? Sasuke nodded. There's no way I can keep up with you. We'll take it easy on you. And while you're not as strong as us, you're definitely smarter. Naruto and Sasuke had found out that behind the lazy exterior was by all rights a genius. Shikamaru was extremely intelligent for a kid his age, and he knew more about ninja techniques, ninja affairs, political relations, clan procedures and history than anyone else. Apparently, when he wasn't cloud watching, he was reading. His memory was excellent as well, so he retained all of the knowledge he acquired quite easily. I don't see how me being smarter than you will help me. You would still beat me in seconds. Naruto shook his head. Who cares? You're coming, no matter how troublesome you think it is. Shikamaru groaned. I'll drag you there if I really have to. Sasuke sighed. He will. Shikamaru sighed. Fine, I'll go. Naruto smiled widely, while Sasuke grinned a little. He could get used to having these two around. Their presence was almost soothing in a fucked up way, but he liked it. Maybe he wouldn't be so alone after all. I swear I'll be strong, big brother. And I'll carry on your dream to protect the village. The top of the Hokage mountain was a special place for Naruto. He always felt closer to his father here than anywhere else, plus it had the best view. It was his go-to spot in the village for anything. Thinking, eating ramen, relaxing after training. But today he was not alone. It's a little cold up here. Naruto's head turned towards his companion. It's just a little windy. You get used to it. The blonde replied. As they walked atop the fourth Hokage's head, the entire view of the Leaf Village and the horizon above it opened up in front of them. Kairi wondrously gazed at the beauty displayed before her as they sat down. Wow, I never realized how big the village was. She stated as her eyes flicked from building to building. That's what I said when Uncle Jiraiya first took me up here. I remember he told me that if I ever wanted to be close to Dad I could just come up here. He smiled as he looked down at the monument underneath him. You miss him, don't you? She asked quietly. Of course I do. He answered matter-of-factly. But missing him won't bring him back. Instead, I'll try my hardest to live up to his name. Both of their names. And then I'll surpass them. If I do that, then I know I'll have made them proud. Kairi stared at Naruto with slightly wide eyes. You know, you're the most mature 7-year-old I've ever met. Naruto shrugged and laughed. Yay, I think Uncle Jiraiya did that on purpose. I guess he didn't want me to be like he was when he was a genin. Kairi's head tilted. What do you mean? Well, he was the dead last on his genin team. It wasn't until he got the Toad contract that he changed. He told me all kinds of stories about Orochimaru and Tsunade kicking his ass. Naruto explained fondly. That's hard to believe. I haven't heard of many ninja alive today that could go toe-to-toe with Jiraiya of the Sannin. Sensei told us that once during a mission, Jiraiya stayed behind to fight a force of 20 Jonin-level ninja. He came back 20 minutes later covered in blood and ash, but Sensei said none of it was his. Naruto chuckled at Kairi's story. That could have been exaggerated, you know? But it sounds like something he would do. He would never let a comrade die before him. Naruto looked up at the sky. Who is your sensei anyway? He asked after a few moments of silence. Aoba Yamashiro. He's a little bit too carefree, but he's serious during training, and he's strong. He's a good sensei. Naruto nodded. Good. You're so lucky you graduated. I can't stand the academy anymore. All I ever do is spar with Sasuke, and we can't even go all out or we'll end up breaking something. I just wish the old man would let me out already. Naruto stated enviously. Speaking of Sasuke, where is he? Kairi asked curiously. You two are always together. Naruto laughed. Yay, but he needed some time alone. I'm sure you heard what happened. Kairi nodded. He's just making peace with it. Well, I hope he does. And don't worry about the academy. You'll be genin before you know it. Naruto looked out over the village and sighed. You're right. A smile crossed his face. And then it won't be much longer till I'm Hokage. A year had passed since the Uchiha massacre. In its wake, the village had lost one of its most prestigious clans, but civil war had been avoided, unbeknownst to most of the population. The villagers' treatment of Sasuke had changed completely, and now they almost worshipped the ground he walked on. Besides the fact that he was a prodigy himself, mostly everyone in the village felt bad for the boy, and occasionally he would get free meals or other special treatment. He asked for none of this of course, but there was no way to stop them. Over the last year Naruto and Sasuke had only grown stronger, as well as Shikamaru. Against his will, Shikamaru had started training with Naruto and Sasuke every day, and after a year, he was easily high genin level. Not as strong as Naruto or Sasuke, but he was certainly stronger than any other academy student. And this was the reason that Kakashi Hatake, as well as Shikaku Nara were in the Hokage's office. This is a hefty request, Kakashi. How do you feel about this, Shikaku? The Nara stepped forward. Honestly, I have no qualms with Kakashi's request. Shikamaru's improvement over the last year has been outstanding. He's already learned 2 of our clan's techniques, as well as attempting a third, not to mention the other techniques he's learned. If anything, I request that Shikamaru be placed on a team with those 2 boys. You do not wish to continue the Ino Shikacho trio? Shikaku sighed. I would love to, but the truth is, for Shikamaru's sake, I would rather him be with those boys. That team has the potential to function just as well, if not better, than my old team. Hiruzen seems surprised by this. That's quite a favorable reply. Kakashi, do you have anything to add? Kakashi shook his head. No, just everything I've told you, Lord Hokage. Their talent is being wasted in the academy. Hiruzen sighed. Well, I can't really say no, can I? Very well, as of today, Kakashi Hitaki is the Jonin sensei of Team 7, which consists of Naruto Namikaze, Sasuke Uchiha, and Shikamaru Nara. Kakashi nodded. Thank you, Lord Hokage. You won't regret this. The Hokage nodded, and both Jonin exited the office. They walked out together, and when they were outside, Kakashi turned to Shikaku. Shikamaru will be fine. I'll protect him with my life. Shikaku smiled. I know. You didn't need to reassure me. But thank you. Kakashi shook his head. No, thank you. I've been trying to get Naruto and Sasuke out of the academy for years. Your approval only helped. Well, those 2 boys have helped my son immensely. There's no one else I'd rather have watching his back. Kakashi nodded. They're definitely something else. Expect to hear great things about your son's team, Shikaku. Shikaku nodded and walked away. Kakashi decided he would take the rest of the day off, and relay his news to Obito and Rin. His teammates had to hear that he was going to be a sensei. Stealth is one of the most important skills, eh? The door to the classroom opened, interrupting Iruka from his lecture. Kakashi stepped into the room. Ah, Captain Kakashi, what a pleasant surprise. Kakashi chuckled. Sorry to bother you, but I'll be taking a few of your students. Iruka nodded. Yes, I got the Hokage's letter this morning. Iruka turned to the class. Naruto, Sasuke, Shikamaru, please go with Kakashi. The 3 students stood up and exchanged looks of confusion before filing down the aisle. Good luck, boys. I know you'll do well. Iruka said with a smile as they walked by, further confusing them. They followed Kakashi out the door, and he led them through the Leaf Village to one of the surrounding training grounds. Naruto smiled when he recognized it, identifying it as the training ground Jiraiya modeled his own after. The boys were silent the whole time, but their confusion was clear to Kakashi. Finally, they stopped in front of 3 large wooden posts, and Kakashi cleared his throat. Okay, so I'm sure the 3 of you are wondering what's going on. He was met with 3 nods. Right. Well, as of today, the 3 of you are no longer academy students. Does that mean what I think it does? Naruto asked excitedly. Yes. Today, you 3 are the genin that make up Team 7, which is led by me. Naruto shouted in elation, while Sasuke and Shikamaru smiled. But, there's one more test before it's official. A test? Shikamaru asked. Kakashi nodded. Yes, a test. Your test, Kakashi pulled 2 bells out of his pocket, is to take these bells from me. The 3 geniuses nodded and got into battle-ready stances. Man, they didn't even say anything about there being only 2 bells. They already get it. Still, I'm curious to see how well they work together. Kakashi tied the bells to his waist and pulled his headband up, revealing his Sharingan. Sasuke's eyes narrowed at this, and his own Sharingan blazed to life. You have until noon to get the bells. Begin. Immediately, Shikamaru's shadow lurched forward, and Kakashi flipped backwards out of his range. Shikamaru's shadow receded and he hurled a few shuriken at Kakashi, who deflected them with a kunai. Shikamaru jumped away into the trees as Naruto and Sasuke charged at Kakashi from his sides. The copy ninja blocked both of their kicks with his arms, and he threw them towards the lake behind him. They both gracefully landed on the surface of the water and dashed back in at the Jonin. Sasuke flew through hand seals and brought his hand to his lips. Fire style. Grand fireball technique. A large fireball, larger than any genin should have been able to produce, shot towards Kakashi. The Jonin's eyes widened before he plummeted underground with the use of his earth style, double suicide decapitation technique. He appeared below Sasuke, but against the Sharingan a technique like that lost its element of surprise, and Sasuke jumped away before Kakashi could grab him. Kakashi jumped up from the ground, and immediately 5 Narutos were upon him. He blocked 2 of their attacks, but the other 3 got a few hits in on Kakashi, only to find that his was a clone. The real Kakashi jumped out of the trees, and his hands flashed through hand seals. Water style. Water dragon missile. A large water dragon rose out of the lake, letting out a loud roar before diving at the Narutos, dispelling all of them at once. Kakashi looked around, seeing that the clearing was now empty. They had retreated for now, but Kakashi wasn't going to give them time to rest. No, he wanted to see how far they could be pushed. Off in the woods, Shikamaru, Sasuke and Naruto sat in a circle, thinking of some way to get the bells. A frontal charge isn't going to work. I think he just established that. Naruto sighed and scratched his head. Well, I don't know what else to do. You guys don't know Kakashi like I do. It's really hard to trick him. The only thing that's ever worked against him was an all-out assault. Shikamaru shook his head. Not this time. He's serious. Naruto sighed and motioned for Shikamaru to continue. Right, here's the plan. Meanwhile, Kakashi jumped through the forest casually, seeking out his charges. He couldn't let them hide forever, that would be no fun. He finally found them sitting in a small circle, talking in hushed voices. He couldn't keep the excitement out of his voice as he appeared right in the middle of their circle. Hey, secrets are no fun. The genin hopefuls yelped in surprise, jumping back and forming a triangle around Kakashi. Kakashi saw Shikamaru's hands go together, and immediately he jumped backwards, between Sasuke and Naruto. He went to throw his kunai, but when he was frozen in place, his eyes widened. How? He looked out of the corner of his eye at Naruto, who stood in the same position as Shikamaru, except his shadow was connected to his. He looked forward again, noticing Shikamaru drop his hands. A second later, Shikamaru turned into Naruto, dropping the transformation. Kakashi sighed. You got me. Sasuke walked up to the paralyzed Kakashi, and ripped the bells off of his waist. Shikamaru, who was now himself again, dropped his technique, and Kakashi was free to move again. So, do we pass? Naruto asked, a smile on his face. Kakashi chuckled. I don't think there's any way I can't pass you, is there? Naruto started to laugh happily, while Sasuke and Shikamaru gave him weird looks. They eventually joined in however, as they were just too excited to finally be genin. Kakashi watched them with a sense of pride. They were his students, and he was gonna make damn sure they became the legends they were supposed to be. As soon as Team 7 had passed their test, Kakashi had insisted they get their team photo done. Naruto, Sasuke and Shikamaru stood together, Naruto in the middle, and Kakashi right behind him, with a hand on Shikamaru and Sasuke's head. Sasuke had a slightly annoyed look on his face, but a smile was bubbling up on his face, while Shikamaru just looked at the sky out of the corner of his eye. Naruto had a small smile on his face, with his headband proudly tied across his forehead. Later when Kakashi looked at the picture, a nostalgic smile made its way to his face. It was quite different than his team photo, and Kakashi couldn't help but notice Naruto's striking similarity to his father. He was like the reincarnation of the fourth. This team was going to be a handful, but Kakashi could only see a bright future for them. When the picture was taken and over with, Kakashi departed to tell the Hokage of Team 7's success, and that they were ready for active duty. Naruto and his teammates decided to celebrate with a bowl of ramen, by Naruto's suggestion. When they got to the ramen stand, they were surprised to see a genin team already there. One of the genin caught Naruto's attention, and he happily bounded over to her. Kairi, said girl turned in her chair, and she smiled when she saw the blonde ninja. Naruto, are you a ninja now? She asked, seeing the headband tied around his head. He smiled proudly. Yup, this is my team. You know Sasuke and this is Shikamaru. Kairi smiled at the boys. A team of geniuses, huh? You're making everyone look bad. Naruto chuckled and scratched his head. So what are you guys here for? Naruto asked. My team just completed our first C-rank mission, so our sensei took us for a treat. Naruto nodded. What was your mission? Just a simple escort. Everything went fine, and it was pretty easy. Kairi smiled. But sensei said a genin's first C rank is a big deal, so we're celebrating. We're celebrating too. We just passed our genin test. So you just graduated? Well then congratulations. Kairi turned to Sasuke and Shikamaru. Are you two as excited as Naruto? Sasuke nodded with a smile, while Shikamaru just shrugged. Well, I hope our teams work together on a mission someday. Kairi stated as her team finished their meals. Bye Naruto. Kairi's team exited the ramen stand, and Team 7 took their places. They ate mostly in silence, just basking in the feeling of being a ninja. A few weeks later, and after a slew of D-rank missions Team 7 could have lived without, they were once again planted on the ground in the park, gazing at the sky. It's Kakashi's birthday in a few days. Sasuke and Shikamaru both perked their heads up and looked at Naruto. Really? Yay, he would never tell you, because he thinks that he doesn't deserve a good birthday. And he doesn't like people in his personal life. Well, what should we get him? Sasuke asked. Naruto smiled. I already had an idea in mind. Sasuke and Shikamaru looked at Naruto expectantly. Well? Shikamaru asked after a minute. Kakashi has a broken sword, made out of chakra-conducting metal in his house. It was originally his father's but he inherited it, and it means a lot to him. Sasuke nodded. That's a great idea, Shikamaru stated, causing Naruto to smile. But how do we fix it? I found a shop that can do it, I just have to talk to the guy. But first, we need a replica made. Why a replica? Sasuke asked. He would notice if we took it, so we need to switch it with an exact replica. Shikamaru nodded. Good idea. But how are we going to get into Kakashi's apartment? I know where all of Kakashi's traps are and how to disable them. As long as he's not home we're good. How do you know all that? Shikamaru asked, slightly amazed. Kakashi was like my guardian after Uncle Jiraiya died. I was at his apartment a lot and he just taught me one day, so I wouldn't hurt myself. Sasuke nodded. Alright, then one of us should go distract Kakashi, while the other two go break in. Sasuke and I will break in, Naruto stated, earning a shrug from Shikamaru. That's fine. I'd rather go do the easier job anyway. Naruto smiled and shook his head. Alright, let's go. They left the park and followed Naruto to Kakashi's apartment via the rooftops. When they got there, they stationed themselves on a roof across from his apartment. Do you see him? Shikamaru asked. Yay, he's sitting on his couch. Sasuke answered. What do we do? Shikamaru, go knock on his door and get him out of there. Shikamaru stared at Naruto blankly. How am I supposed to do that? Don't ask me, you're the smart one. Shikamaru sighed and jumped away from the roof, landing on Kakashi's level. Naruto and Sasuke watched as Shikamaru knocked on Kakashi's door, talked with him for a moment, and walked away with his sensei in tow. Wow, he actually did it. Sasuke looked at Naruto in disbelief before following him across the roof and into Kakashi's apartment. Naruto dashed over to the wall, where two pieces of a shiny silver blade were mounted on the wall. Alright, let's go get that replica made. Naruto stood in front of the blacksmith store, broken blade in hand. They had successfully gotten a replica made, and that was currently mounted on the wall in Kakashi's apartment. The blacksmith that Naruto was going to now was the same man who had made all of his father's flying thunder god kunai. If anyone could fix this, it was him. Naruto walked into the store, earning a smile from the familiar man. Naruto, good to see you. How are you? Naruto smiled at the old blacksmith. I've been okay. I have a favor to ask. The old man nodded. Anything for you, my boy. Naruto handed the broken blade to the man. Can you fix this? It's my sensei's and he never fixed it. The old man examined the blade for a moment. I take it Kakashi Hitaki is your sensei? Naruto nodded. Yay, how'd you know? Any Leaf Village blacksmith worth his salt could recognize the weapon of the Leaf's white fang. The man set the blade on the counter. I can certainly fix it, but there's one problem. Naruto frowned. What is that? The metal used in this blade is extremely rare, and it can only be found in mines in the land of iron. I would need to get my hands on some of that metal to fix your blade. Naruto scratched his head. How do you normally get it? Well, I usually go to the Hokage and have a mission commissioned. Naruto smiled. That's perfect. You can go request a mission, and you can request my team to take it on. The man looked at Naruto curiously. You're a ninja already? Naruto nodded. Well, I'll be damned. Just like your father. Naruto smiled. I'll go to the Hokage with your mission. Just make sure you come back with the right medal. I will. Naruto waved to the man and exited the shop. His plan had gone smoothly, all that was left was to retrieve the medal. That's enough for today. The genin of Team 7 looked at Kakashi in confusion. But we've only been here half an hour. Kakashi nodded. Yep, but the Hokage has called us in to assign us a mission. Naruto smiled. The old man came through for him. Let's go to the Hokage's office. Team 7 raced away from the training field, eager to start their first mission. When they arrived, they were able to see the Hokage quickly, and they were led straight to the room. Ah, Team 7, just in time. This person specifically asked for your team, so I wanted to get it to you as soon as I could. Kakashi took the mission scroll. They asked for us specifically? He asked as he scanned the scroll. Yes, I thought it odd too. Not many genin teams get requested for missions after only a week, not to mention AC rank. But I think your team is more than ready. Hiruzen could see the gleam in each of the genin's eyes, and he could almost feel their excitement. You may recognize the name though. Kakashi looked at the name. That's a name I haven't seen in years. I should stop by his shop sometime. Kakashi tucked the scroll into his pouch. We accept the mission, Lord Hokage. Hiruzen nodded. Excellent. Leave as soon as you are ready. Kakashi nodded and Team 7 left the office. When they were outside, Kakashi stopped them. The Land of Iron is about a week away. Pack for 3 weeks at least. I do not know how long it will take to find this medal we are looking for. The 3 genin nodded, and Kakashi disappeared, leaving his genin to pack by themselves. This is perfect. We'll have Kakashi's blade fixed in no time. Naruto cheered, earning looks from Shikamaru and Sasuke. What does Kakashi's present have to do with this? Sasuke asked. This mission was requested by the blacksmith I went to for Kakashi's blade. It's to get the special metal to fix it. And Kakashi doesn't know? Naruto shook his head. Not a clue. Then he smiled. Come on, let's go already. Naruto started running down the street, leaving Sasuke and Shikamaru to catch up. Excitement bubbled through their veins, and their anticipation was at a peak. They were finally real ninja, and their lives really started here. Team 7 waited at the gates of the Leaf Village patiently. They of course knew of Kakashi's late streak, and thus they were half an hour late. You would think he'd at least be on time for a mission. Naruto stated, leaning against the guard post. Kakashi suddenly appeared in front of Naruto, startling him and causing him to fall on his ass. Are we ready? Naruto jumped up. We've been ready. Great. Then what are we waiting for? Kakashi walked out of the gate. Sasuke and Shikamaru closed behind. Naruto followed along, grumbling about Kakashi's antics. When they were a good distance away from the village, Kakashi jumped into the trees. His genin followed, and soon they were all jumping together in a line across the vast foliage of the Land of Fire. Kakashi of course had to slow his pace a little, but they kept up with him nonetheless. So what is this mission anyway? Naruto asked, feigning his obliviousness. We are to go to the Land of Iron and acquire some chakramantine, and deliver it to a blacksmith by the name of Junichi Geno. Junichi is one of the best blacksmiths in the village. He's been in the business for years. He's the man who made my father's kunai, right? Kakashi nodded. Yes. Sensei always said that without those kunai his technique would have been flawed. Kakashi cleared his throat. Anyway, the mission is to retrieve this medal for Junichi. It shouldn't be too hard. Naruto nodded. What's the Land of Iron like? Sasuke asked. Cold. It snows year-round there. Most of the Land of Iron is rocky, mountainous terrain. Their main export is metal, because of the abundance of many metals in the area. Most of the villages are mining villages, built directly on top of the mines themselves. Isn't that a little dangerous? Shikamaru asked. You would think so, but they make it work. Also, another thing about the Land of Iron is that there are no ninja there. Naruto's eyes widened. No ninja? How is that possible? The Land of Iron is governed only by its daimyo, and the samurai are the only military force there. The Land of Iron prides themselves on staying neutral in ninja affairs, and they've been like that since the founding of the hidden villages. Kakashi explained. As they traveled, Kakashi answered a slew of questions from the boys, who were eager beyond words. Finally, the daylight faded, and Kakashi called for them so set up camp. In just over 20 minutes, the camp was set up, and a fire was blazing in the center. Some instant ramen was being boiled, courtesy of Naruto. Are we always going to have ramen? Shikamaru asked, staring at the pot of boiling noodles lazily. As long as I'm alive we will. Naruto declared. Ramen is the food of the gods. Shikamaru stared at Naruto with slightly wide eyes, before accepting the fact that Naruto was a little insane. Right, Kakashi chuckled at the exchange. Sensei used to eat ramen every mission too. Sasuke silently stared at the fire as his team relaxed. He couldn't help but wonder about Itachi. He had no idea where he was, what he was doing, or even if he was okay. He wasn't feeling sad, he was just worried. Itachi may have been one of the strongest ninja he knew, but life on the run was brutal. Sasuke only hoped Itachi could cope. Hey Sasuke, you alright? Sasuke snapped out of his reverie and looked over at Naruto. He smiled slightly. Yay, I'm fine. Naruto smiled back at him, and bowls of ramen were distributed. They sat around the campfire for the remainder of dinner, talking about things both related and unrelated to the ninja world. When their stomachs were full, Kakashi took the first guard shift, promising to wake them when he was tired. They headed off to bed, although none of them felt like sleeping, well besides Shikamaru. Naruto was of course especially wound up, so he ended up waiting with Kakashi, keeping guard with him. Kakashi was surprised at Naruto's actions, but he admired them as well. Soon, they were talking like two lifelong teammates on a routine scout mission. Kakashi didn't understand how those three boys fell into being ninjas so easily, but their decisions and attitudes, while not without childish qualities, were highly mature for 8-year-olds. As the night went on, Kakashi couldn't help but feel excited for the days to come. Being a sensei to this team was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he was going to put his mind, body, and soul into it. 5 days later, they finally arrived in the Land of Iron. It was a cold, crisp morning, but the pelting snow and harsh wind barely affected Team 7. Upon their crossing the border, they donned cloaks to keep their bodies warm. Now they were traversing through the snow, on the way to one of the mining villages. What's the name of the village we're headed to? Sasuke yelled to Kakashi over the howling wind. Chakramontine Town. All of the villages are named after the metal that can be mined there. It's a pretty effective way of organization if you think about it. Kakashi yelled back to his students. They decided not to reply, for they were sick of yelling, so the rest of the journey was in silence. When they finally arrived at the town gates, 4 samurai guards drew their swords as they approached, instantly recognizing them as ninja, even with the cloaks. You're far out of your territory, Leaf Ninja. One of the samurai stated with firmness. What are you doing here, Kakashi Hitaki? Kakashi sighed, his fame once again giving away his identity. We're here on a simple mission. Kakashi shouted, holding up the mission scroll. We just wish for entrance into your village. The samurai cautiously stepped forward. Kakashi handed him the scroll, and he tore it open. He read the contents quickly, rolled it shut, and handed it to Kakashi. Very well, but we will be keeping an eye on you, Hitaki. The samurai stepped aside, and the gates creaked open. They revealed a small town, with roads just big enough for pedestrians, and stone huts lining them. Smoke was pouring out of each chimney, and it was no surprise with the weather the way it was. Wooden pallets and bricks were stacked up against some of the huts. Various mining tools were leaned against the huts as well, and it was clear that all this town knew was mining. Signs hung from posts, showing which huts were shops or inns. They stopped at one particular inn, the Mountain's Cradle, and they had booked 2 rooms. The rooms were surprisingly warm, but that was probably because each room had a fireplace. They were all currently in the same room, discussing how to go about their mission. The first thing we need to find out how to get our hands on some chakramontine. I can take care of that. I'll go out and ask around. You 3 just stay here and relax. I know that was a long trip. The 3 boys nodded as Kakashi stood up. He pulled his cloak around his body and exited their room, stepping into the stone hallway. He walked through the halls of the inn and outside into the snow, searching around for anyone who could help him. A group of miners stood outside of a blacksmith shop, probably after selling what they had mined that day. He approached them, getting their attention by clearing his throat. They looked at him skeptically, not trustful of any ninja who passes through these parts. Can we help you? One of the bigger miners asked, hefting his pickaxe onto his shoulder. I'm just looking for a way to get some chakramontine. A few of the miners shook their heads. I'm afraid that's not possible. The big miner stated. Why not? Kakashi asked. Well, there's a group of bandits who have made their home in the Chakramontine mine. They took it over, and we haven't been able to get back in since. Kakashi seemed shocked. The samurai haven't taken care of them? Usually, samurai were a lot more precise and hasty when it came to bandits. It was in a samurai's code to protect his people, and any threat was to be eradicated immediately or die trying. Well, that's the thing. They tried, and they got their asses kicked. Kakashi was shocked further. A bunch of bandits beat samurai? The big miner shook his head. Not quite. Now I don't know if this is true, but I've heard rumors, and it's the only explanation as to why the samurai lost. There has to be a ninja in that group. That would explain it, thought Kakashi. While the samurai in the Land of Iron were definitely the strongest of any samurai army on the continent, there weren't many samurai in the world that could fight on par with a ninja. Ninjas just had a wider, more diverse set of skills. I see. Where is this mine? The miner pointed down the road towards a mountain. Straight down this road will lead you to the mine. Just make sure you follow the markers when you leave the village. Kakashi nodded. Thank you, sir. Kakashi turned to leave, but the miner called for him to wait. Are you going after those bandits? If they get in the way of my mission, then I'll take their lives. That's my job. With that he walked away, satisfied with the information he acquired. For the rest of the day they would rest, and tomorrow they would scout out the mine. Team 7 marched along the snowy trail, their path shown to them by the markers. Kakashi had explained the situation upon arriving back at the inn, and now his genin were 100% serious. The pretense of a fight got their blood pumping and their hearts thumping. Finally, they caught their first glimpse of the mine shaft, and Kakashi stopped them behind a ridge. Okay, we know that this mine is occupied by the bandits, making it an enemy stronghold. I found out the bandits are about 75 strong, so there should be no problems. However, as I mentioned before, there's a possibility that there is a ninja with the group. I'll deal with him when he shows himself. Kakashi glanced up at the mine, stared at it for a few seconds, and then turned back to his charges. Alright, here's the plan. Go in and defeat all the bandits. The genin gave Kakashi a dry look. That's not much of a plan. I bet Shikamaru could think of a way better one. Naruto stated. Kakashi just chuckled. I agree, it isn't the most well thought out plan. But they're bandits. Realistically, if there aren't any Jonin-level ninja in there, I could do this by myself. The genin's eyes widened. You could take on 75 people alone? Sasuke asked, not being able to keep some awe out of his voice. Bandits, yes. But ninja are a different story. Now listen up. There are 2 sentries posted by the entrance. Naruto, Sasuke, you two go knock them unconscious. Naruto and Sasuke grinned before they left their cover. They dashed towards the mine, faster than a bandit's eye could track, hiding behind a few wooden crates near the entrance. They silently jumped behind the guards, and before the bandits could speak, Naruto and Sasuke delivered brutal strikes to the temple with the hilt of their kunai. The bandits collapsed in a thud, and a few moments later Kakashi and Shikamaru walked up to the entrance. Well done. Naruto beamed at the praise, while Sasuke just grinned slightly. Kakashi walked up to the mine entrance, looking down the long, dark tunnel. Torches hung on the walls, barely illuminating the mine. Unused tools and various supply crates were stacked against and on top of each other, but there was no sign of the bandits. It looks like the bandits are further in. Let's go in and see what we can find. Kakashi started to walk into the mine, and his students were right behind him. They treaded quietly through the mine, in order to keep their presence hidden. Finally, they reached what looked like one of the huts back in the village, except it was at least 30 times larger, and Kakashi decided to investigate it. As soon as he walked into the large hut, he regretted it. This must have been the barracks, because all 75 of those bandits turned and glared at him when he walked in. Aha, I knew I took a wrong turn. Get him. Kakashi sighed and started to fly through hand seals. On the outside, Team 7 was waiting patiently for their sensei when the roof exploded, showering stones everywhere. Kakashi jumped out of the hut, and landed next to his charges. Ready for a fight? Naruto grinned in anticipation as the bandits came pouring out of the barracks. They surrounded Team 7, leaving them no choice but to fight their way out. It was quiet for a moment, until part of the bandits parted, giving room for who Kakashi assumed to be the leader to walk through. Well, did those pesky villagers finally swallow their pride and hire some ninja to take care of us? The man grinned and stared at Kakashi, his headband shining in the low light. And not just anyone, but the copy ninja himself. This just keeps getting more interesting. We're here for the Chakramantine. Kakashi replied. It's not my mission to kill you, but I will if you get in my way. The Rouge Ninja started laughing. So righteous. Well then Kakashi, I tire of this banter. Show me the power of the copy ninja. The ninja, who was previously a member of the Hidden Sand Village, judging by his slashed-out headband, pulled out a katana, and charged it with wind chakra. Kakashi's eyes widened. He may be a little stronger than I thought. He mumbled to himself. You three take care of the bandits. He shouted, before charging a kunai with lightning chakra and charging in. He threw his kunai, knowing that hand-to-hand with a wind user was not in his best interest. He followed up his throw with a few hand seals. Fire style. Rolling fire. Kakashi blew out a wave of fire that rushed across the ground at his opponent. His opponent jumped into the air and dove in at Kakashi, his katana aimed at Kakashi's head. Kakashi stepped sideways, letting the blade pass by him, before grabbing the Rouge Ninja's arm. He snapped it backwards, hearing a satisfying crunch as he did. The Rouge Nin grunted in pain, but he didn't falter. He switched the grip on his sword, bringing it around to cleave Kakashi's head off. Kakashi substituted with a rock in time to save his head, and he reappeared behind the missing ninja with a kunai at his throat. It's over. Don't move or I'll kill you. The ninja started to laugh, and when he twitched, Kakashi plunged the kunai into his jugular, ending his life. Naruto had never thought about fighting this many enemies at once. It was complete chaos. Bandits were hacking and slashing at him and his teammates left and right. With the addition of numerable shadow clones, it was almost as if there was a tiny war going on. But what the bandits made up for in number, they definitely lacked in skill. Naruto understood why Kakashi said he would be able to take on all these idiots by himself. He was sure that he could have done it just as well. The bandits took no time at all to defeat, and by the end there were a bunch of tied-up, unconscious ruffians decorating the mine floor like lawn gnomes. Naruto surveyed his team's work proudly, deeming his first mission a complete success, even if they hadn't technically accomplished it yet. Now was the easy part. Eventually, Kakashi came back and joined them, although the other ninja did not. They didn't ask, nor did Kakashi tell, but they knew what Kakashi had done. Any casualties? The white-haired ninja asked as he approached the boys. I think one of them might have got my hair. Shikamaru stated with annoyance, feeling the back of his hair. Well then, we should get you to a hospital right away. Sasuke said, completely straight-faced. Naruto giggled, and Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Fine, but you had to carry me. At that, Sasuke frowned. Never. Kakashi patted both boys on the head, turning their expressions into smiles. You guys did great today. I couldn't be any prouder than I am right now. Does that mean you'll treat us to ramen when we get home? Naruto asked excitedly. No, I would like to hold on to this next paycheck, thank you very much. Naruto sulked, before his head snapped up. Hey, where is this medal we're supposed to find anyway? Kakashi looked around. He walked over to a shiny, silver rock formation. Found it. Shikamaru rolled his eyes, and he walked over. This is Chakramantine? He asked, examining the rock. Yup. Grab a kunai and start breaking off chunks of it. We'll seal it in a scroll, and then our mission will be complete. Naruto and Sasuke walked over, pulling out kunai along with Shikamaru. They got to work on the Chakramantine vein, breaking off as many large chinks as they could. After about 10 minutes, Kakashi stopped them and sealed their prize in a scroll. That should be enough. Come on, we'll go back to the village and rest for the rest of the day. Tomorrow we depart for home. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the sight of the Leaf Village gates. After another long 5 days of travel, he was ready to lie down in his comfy bed and sleep. The villagers of Chakramantine town had been extremely thankful for the eradication of the bandits, stating that the bandits had the village in a chokehold with their occupation of the mine. Their last night at the inn had been free, and many other gifts were offered to them as well, but they were all declined. The samurai had cleaned up the rest of the bandits, although they could take no credit for it. When they arrived in the village, Katestu and Izumo, the gate guards, told them the Hokage was expecting them. He wished to speak with your team immediately upon your return, Izumo had told Kakashi. When they arrived in his office, Hiruzen was puffing his pipe, staring out the window. You wish us to see as Lord Hokage? Hiruzen turned around and set his pipe on his desk. Indeed, how did they perform? The professor asked, getting straight to the point. Better than I did on my first mission, that's for sure. Hiruzen smiled. I've heard that story before. Kakashi chuckled. Well then I assume the mission was a success. Here is your pay. Hiruzen handed Kakashi 4 envelopes, and the mission objective? Kakashi pulled out the sealing scroll full of chakramantine. Excellent. This will be delivered to Junichi by the end of the day. You are dismissed. Kakashi nodded, and Team 7 exited the tower. He distributed the pay to his genin, who looked at their envelopes with pride. Ah, I remember my first paycheck. Kakashi drew in a deep, nostalgic breath. Don't waste it on hookers, booze, and drugs. The boys eyed him oddly. Hey, I guess you're not old enough for that. Well, ciao. Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke. Do you think? No. Sasuke cut Naruto off mid-question. You don't even know what I was going to ask. Naruto shouted in protest. You were going to ask if we thought Sensei was going to go get some hookers, drugs and booze. Naruto looked down at the ground. Jerk. Shikamaru sighed. And now that image is in my head forever. Naruto laughed at this, and soon the other two joined in as well.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.